Good afternoon, morning, or potentially evening. This is episode 39 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40k podcast. A Warhammer 40,000 podcast made, produced, developed and now delivered to you, the fine people that exist in the ethereal realm of nonsense, otherwise known as the internet. Welcome, one and all. We hope you enjoy our Warhammer 40,000 related ramblings. And by we, I don't just mean me, although my name is Dan. Hello, welcome to episode 39. I am joined, as ever, by my good buddy Philip. How's it going, Phil?
Oh, hello. I'm very good, thank you.
I'm relatively pleased with myself that I seemingly have, after 39 episodes, fallen into something of a rhythm with that opening segment. Do you feel like I need to refresh it a little bit more or try and mix it up, or do you think that's about right?
Well, your little greeting that you do about the morning and the evening, you do pretty much every episode, so, you know, you could mix it up if you want.
Well, I challenge you, sir, to assert that I have very rarely used that one. That's like a 1 in 4, I reckon.
I think that's a pretty common one. I mean, it always feels like that's what you say. I mean, maybe we need to go back and investigate.
Maybe to celebrate the relatively minor milestone of 40 episodes, assuming we get there, I should do a montage of every single intro that I've did. Like the very first 5 seconds, 10 seconds of every single episode done in sequence.
That's still quite a lot of intro.
No, absolutely.
Because you're timing it by 40, basically.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe as like an outro piece, like at the end of the thing, we can throw it in there, talk about episode 40, celebration, outro bit. By the way, sorry, because we haven't got around to doing it yet, Joe's here as well, because I can tell he's chomping at the bit to make a point. Come on, Joe, what you got for me?
I just like the idea that you do that like, if you do it 4 seconds a piece, that 3 to 4 minute intro just to prove a point to Phil that you don't say that every single episode.
I mean, you know, the lengths I'll go to prove a point, mate, is quite extensive, to be completely honest with you. You know?
Clearly.
I am not a man who is easily, you know, persuaded away from a good point.
But to Phil's point, he's right. You do say it a lot.
Well, we'll put it to the test, guys. Come episode 40, I will create a beautiful montage, and I mean, Joe won't know anyway because he never listens to this, but for the people listening, you can all discover how many times I've said it.
You're not worried that our listening numbers might decline after that?
As I said, I'll put it at the end of the episode. It's not going to be like a main event feature. Although 40 episodes sort of feels like it has some significance. I don't know why, you know, a whole number like a 40 feels more important than 39, because I'm pretty happy we're getting up to 39 episodes at this point. But, you know, I don't know. I feel like there is some significance to 40. I mean, it is greater. We're moving into a whole new digit, aren't we? I mean,
well, exactly. It's 10 away from 50, which is a big milestone.
50 definitely feels like a milestone. We should probably start coming up with a plan for what we're going to do above and beyond for episode 50, because that sort of feels like the sort of milestone that people celebrate, you know?
I mean, yeah.
I wouldn't mind getting that cake that I was offered at like episode like 20 or 30, whatever it was.
I mean, that cake did manifest, it's just that none of you wanted it.
Well, I wasn't there.
Oh yeah, you bailed out of Warhammer Fest
but
last night, didn't you?
It wasn't actual cake either. It was like tiny individual bits of cake.
Oh right, so that isn't cake, is it?
Well, no, that's like a muffin or something, isn't it? Or a fairy cake? It's not an actual cake.
I mean,
what, like one of those big square ones that you get at school?
No, I just want, like, you know, a nice Victoria sponge, something round.
I mean, yet again, my
slices.
generosity is being thrown back in my face here. I don't see any of you buying cakes.
I'll buy my own cake tomorrow morning. Celebrate another day lived through. Yes.
Hooray! I'm not dead. Celebrate with a cake. That'll shore me up for the future.
Yeah. Then I smoke 20 fags, and I'll just be like, just living life.
And for anyone curious, in the Americas, fags is British for cigarettes. Not that we're endorsing the consumption of cigarettes. In fact, I'm quite against it. Over here, we have a fantastic policy that.
I feel like we should just cut that out.
No. We're keeping it in, Joe. I was just going to say that over here we have this fantastic policy that all of our cigarette packaging has to come completely and utterly coated from head to toe in some of the most grotesque imagery imaginable. You thought it was rough in the 41st millennia. You should see what it's like in your average Tesco's tobacco stand. Good Lord, those staff should be paid for mental trauma having to work behind the tills of a Tesco's serving out cigarettes.
My favourite is the naked man in the bed, like in the fetal position. Because
is that the one that makes you go, "Ooh, yeah, that's gonna get me going"?
That's gonna like the thing is that it's not dissuading anyone because the tobacco and cigarette sales are still up. It's not stopping anyone.
It's stopping me, Joe. I don't smoke.
I know.
And Phil doesn't smoke either. Phil's a good boy as well.
No, I don't.
It's just you, Joe, because you try and look cool. You're like, "Oh, look at me." Ooh.
I do it in a leather jacket next to a bike shed.
You do, while writing poetry.
Yeah.
Could you recite one of your cigarette-inspired poems for us, Joe?
No, they're too dark.
I'm tapping into a very different version of myself in that reality.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. But yeah, all right, fair enough. Look, intros aside, this is episode 39. Thank you very much for joining us. Phil, what have you been doing hobby-wise? We didn't even get around to the usual bants. What have you been doing?
Oh, I've been scratch building lots of different things out of plasticard.
Oh my god.
So, some of you might know, on my website, beyondthetabletop.com, a bit of a plug, I make and sell a internal sponson kit for the Lehman Russ. So you can have internal sponsors rather than ones that stick out. And they're all boxy.
And they shoot inside, not outside.
No, the gun's sort of recessed, basically, but it shoots outside. It shoots outwards, not inside, obviously. But basically what I've been doing is I've been making like a little faceplate. So if you have that kit and you just don't want to pay points to run some sponsons on your tank, you can put this little thing on top so it covers it up. So it just looks like a regular Lehman Russ, or looks, like a slightly different Lehman Russ, but one without sponsons. So I've been doing that as one of my things.
Doesn't a Lehman Russ have the option of coming without sponsons already?
Well, the thing is, normally, if you have a Lehman Russ, let's say you have the external sponsons, most people would normally glue them on, so you're stuck with them. You go to the lengths of magnetising them, which I know some people do. But if you take the internal sponson kit, basically, you can't remove it, so it's there forever. But the idea is now you can cover it up so you can run it as either a Lehman Russ with sponsons or without, basically.
There you go, man. Giving people choice. That's exciting.
Well, exactly. And then the other one is I'm creating a custom Punisher Gatling gun for the Mars Alpha Lehman Russ, because that's one of the few guns that you can't actually buy for that turret.
Okay.
So you normally have to convert one up of some kind. So.
Are you not concerned that you're going to become another Chapter House Studios?
A lawsuit is inbound. Will we become liable by association with you for this sort of stuff?
Well, the thing is, all my kits are... nothing's a copy, for example, of a Games Workshop design. All the stuff I do is sort of more inspired by World War I or II in terms of the design of them. And they're just made to be compatible with existing kits. So it's not like I've made a model that looks almost identical to a Space Marine and I've called it a Stormtrooper or a Space Trooper. And even if I was doing that, I somehow think it is actually legal because Games Workshop lost that Chapter House case. Not that I'm trying to convince it.
But because of that,
Joe has well and truly stitched you up with that question, hasn't he? It's like, cheers, Joe. Thanks for that.
And because of Chapter House, that's why we've got so many push fit kits. Because you can't make upgrade packs for something that's like half the shoulder pad is also part of the gun.
Well, I don't think that is why we get push fit kits. I think we get push fit kits because they're better designed rather than these weird.
No, it's part of the reason why. Because then.
Come on, Phil. Let him have his mad conspiracy theories.
Yeah, this is Zeitgeist 101. This is.
Is it Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist?
Oh, I don't know. There's some kind of ghoul involved.
Quite possibly. Some sort of evil spirit leading us in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Towards
That's why you don't get fancy helmets anymore.
That's it, man. The world has moved on. No longer must you have fancy-looking helmets. What have you been doing, Joe, then? What's been going on in your hobby realm?
Edge highlighting black armor. I'm now sick of it now.
Really?
Yeah. But it's not Space Marine armor. It is Incubi armor.
Oh.
It's a thing that we actually go over later.
It's true. We have a whole conversation about that.
But I'm a little bit done with it.
I mean, you've only got, like, 9 of them to paint, mate.
10.
Oh, 10, sorry. I thought you only had a squad of 9.
No, I got a 10-man squad, mate.
Oh, all right, mate, all right. I'm sorry.
10 man. And old Yanari What's-the-Chops guy. Swordy dude.
The Vizarg?
The Vizarg, yeah.
But he's got red armour.
Yeah, I'm painting his red, although it's got a slight conversion. He had an arm swap and a head swap because the model that I got had neither. So, yeah. So he looks a little bit different, you know. Yeah. He's a little hipster.
He's been hanging out with the Drakari a bit too more in his leather jacket, writing poems, smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, that's the life he leads now.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you've been channeling. Your Fonzie type attitude.
Yeah, or James Dean. He just likes to ride motorcycles across the countryside.
And water ski, jump over a shark type scenario.
Yeah. Did that happen in the film?
No, it happened in Happy Days. That's where the term jumping the shark comes from.
I've never heard that phrase ever.
Have you never heard the phrase jumping the shark? So, for some people out there, they might think that as our banter and general kind of demeanour within these podcasts becomes a little bit more freeform and a bit more reflective of our normal type of communications, because in the early days we tried to be a little bit more outwardly professional or potentially a little bit more forced enthusiasm in places. As obviously the series has gone on, we've become a little bit more comfortable with ourselves and our own, way of communicating. Some people may assume that we have jumped the shark.
Oh.
But that is in reference to the episode of Happy Days where the Fonz jumps over a shark.
Oh, was it a real shark?
I don't know, Phil, you're likely to know these things. Was it a real shark?
I mean, I assume it was probably... it was meant to be a real shark, but I presume it would just be a plastic one.
A facsimile made to represent reality, much like me. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. All good fun. I mean, from my side of things, on the hobby side of things, I've been trying to make head nor tail of how this new Dark Angels nonsense kind of works. The lovely new book for the Dangles has come out, and obviously the Grey Knights and the Thousand Suns are all lovely as well, but I've been looking at the Dark Angels. I'm quite interested in the fact that Dark Angels still have access to the kill shot stratagem, so I've been, poring over it going, oh, what if you take 5 Predators? Will that be good? But in the end I ended up watching a lot of LVO coverage this weekend past and realised, no, because they can't just, mysteriously phase through walls, and it seems that if anything leaves the safety of the L-shaped terrain, they're as good as dead. So there you go.
I think like Dark Angels going forward are going to be like a really good like ally detachment. As it used to be called, and I think you're going to see a lot of detachments of like Samael, 2 Talon Masters, and a massive 10-man unit of Deathwing or Deathwing Knights, just so you can get them into people really, really quickly.
I like the sound of 5 Predators though. 3 regular Predators and then 2 of the Relic Demos pattern predators from the Forge World book that will soon probably go into Legend, so this probably won't even work. But that way you maximise the amount of kill shot that you've got there, thus decreasing the opportunity for losing kill shot as well, which is quite good.
But the problem is you'll go get up against someone because the list that's 3 Thunderfire Cannons, 3 Whirlwinds, 3 Whirlwind Scorpiuses, 3 Quad Mortars, and then Scouts. When that goes first and kills all 5 of them, turn 1.
I don't think 3 Thunderfire Cannons will kill all 5 Predators.
But the Whirlwinds will help.
Oh yeah, I mean they'll definitely cause some
demolish
pain.
you.
But not all 40k is played like it is the LVO. I mean, that was one of the weirdest aspects of it. It's always that thing where you're watching it thinking, this is a very different version of 40k than the one I regularly play. This is very, I don't know. I mean, again, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes at the Bournemouth Grand Tournament. And on the topic of the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, that's going to be a topic for today. I don't know whether I'm going to do it first or second. What do you reckon, Phil? Should we do Bournemouth Grand Tournament followed by LVO reveal, or other way around?
I imagine most people want to hear about the LVO first.
All right, fair enough. So we're going to go LVO reveals. Now, to be clear, we're not going to massively talk about the tournament, although we just recorded the segment, and despite saying we weren't going to talk about the tournament, we do kind of talk about the tournament, but very briefly.
But not like in a competitive aspect. No. Just taking the mickey, mainly.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the angle we've gone for. We're well aware that there are a lot of really great people out there who talk about competitive 40k, and although we have a little sprinkling of that, it's not really the kind of show that we are. So if you want some competitive 40k, it's probably not the place. Although that being said, when we talk about the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, we do actually kind of get into a bit of competitive 40k because both myself and Joe are going to the Bournemouth Grand Tournament. We're going back to our roots. I'm taking Craftwood Elder, he's taking Drakari. We talk at quite a long length about the theory behind our army lists and how well we think they work within ITC missions and all that good stuff. So I suppose if you like competitive stuff, this is probably one of the more competitive focused episodes. But that's not really par for the course when it comes to us, as our regular listeners no doubt know. But yeah, there you go. Look, this is going to be episode 39. We hope you really enjoy it. Phil, do you have any thoughts or feelings at this time that you feel like need to be expressed?
Not at all. No, I think it'll be a good episode. So listen in. Listen in.
There you go. Spoken from the hollow void that is Phil. I have no emotion. Move on.
You back on the drudgery, Phil? Are you back in the shed?
No. I'm nice and warm in the house today.
There was that fantastic comment, wasn't there? I was going through the iTunes reviews, and some fellow had written lyrics to the Free Kings song that we were using for the Christmas episodes. Hang on, I'll see if I can find it ever so quickly.
5 minutes later.
So yeah, a comment from De Fug Duk Spook Budus. It's a bit of a mouthful. It's a random assortment of letters, but this is probably one of the finest 5-star reviews we've had. Happened on the 18th of December. And here it goes now. I might put the music in the background to kind of bring this together in a way. So I'll try and sort of deliver it in a kind of more lyrical way. So, they 3 kings of Warhammer are Dan in his bedroom, Joe in the bar, fulfill the beard. It's quite weird. His shed has no heater. I mean, that didn't necessarily work. I don't know. Fulfill the beard. It's quite weird. His shed has no heater. Yeah, it kind of works. Anyway, oh, give us wisdom. Set us right. Tell us of your latest fight. Army listings, sometimes quizzing. This podcast really isn't. I mean, come on. That is a fantastic review right there.
I like that it has to confirm that it's not bad.
Yeah.
At the end.
I will have obviously bleeped me saying the offensive thing, and credit where credit's due to. He doesn't actually say it. He just writes sh ... Which, thumbs up to you, sir. Thank you very much for your lovely review. And if any of you others out there in the world want to write us some spectacular 5-star reviews that we can critique in this intro segment, why not do it? Because, it helps us out, and maybe you'll get shouted out for your creative wonder. Apologies for butchering the middle section about for Phil, the beard is quite weird. His shed has no heater. That just didn't. I don't know. I didn't quite get the flow of that, but the rest of it, top notch, mate. Top notch. Shall we get on with the show, guys?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe can we ask for some haikus?
No.
Well?
I think this is time that we move on.
Maybe you should be plugging the the reviews. Maybe get some more people to review us.
Didn't I just do that?
I mean, you sort of vaguely mentioned it, but you didn't overtly call out to give us some love and some 5-star reviews.
That is true. Joe, you're our main beggar. Come on, get the love.
Give us some reviews.
5-star reviews.
5-star reviews.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Follow us on social media.
Oh yeah, we got that. Go on the Instagram. Go on the Facebook.
Phil has a Patreon for Beyond the Tabletop, not for this.
Yeah, give Phil some money.
But also, you ideally wouldn't mind some money. So maybe.
I would mind one, but I haven't got maybe I should get one of those those GoFundMe's or is it called Coffee now? Where you could
buy me a coffee.
Yeah, and people would just donate coffees to you.
I mean, that would be pretty cool.
I don't really drink much coffee, but I do have an unhealthy addiction to Monster Ultra, so those are great. Occasionally, Mango Loco, but last time I drank that, I nearly died because it gives you some mean heart palpitations. And my God, I prayed for death. But it's one of those it tastes delicious, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. It's the most refreshing thing I've ever had. I will pay for the crippling stomach palpitations later.
There you go.
Yeah.
On the topic of Batchy, again, just one last one. People who've said nice things on social media. Scott Reynolds, he really wants us to go ahead and make the I'm Not That Joe t-shirt, or rather, I'm Not Joe Malin t-shirt. Although, again, as I kind of responded to him in the comments, I don't necessarily know if we could do a I'm Not Joe Malin t-shirt, because that becomes a little bit sort of singly outy and a bit kind of unnecessarily rude. But I reckon I'm Not That Joe.
You know Joe relatively well.
I do.
In the sense that you've spoken to him and I haven't. So you therefore know him quite well.
Yeah.
So you can just message him and be like, we've got this weird situation that's gone on. Can we use your name?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I've been talking to my buddy Lee, and he's up for it. I mean, to be honest, he's going to smash out a design, Joe. I think we're going to get it for the Bournemouth Grand Tournament for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think Joe Malin's actually at the Bournemouth Grand Tournament as well. So I'm Not That Joe.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Also, if we're going to do that, can I not? Because the t-shirts that he produced for the Lookout Sir t-shirt
are of the highest possible quality and should not be critiqued in any way, shape, or form.
They're amazing, but they're sport t-shirts that because the problem is if I was built like The Rock, it'd be like wearing one of the cool Under Armour shirts. It'd be amazing, but I'm not. And I look like a bag of custard. So, like a nice polo shirt maybe, or something like that.
All right, well, look, this is a conversation that the listeners don't need to be involved in. It's already been 25 minutes. I feel like we've done enough of this. Let's get on now, shall we, with the opening segment where we talk about the lovely models that were revealed during the LVO. Transitional noise. Woo! Hello, my friendly friends. Not that we know each other or can necessarily call each other that, but I am for the sake of this bit, because that whole thing where I go, in this bit of the podcast, has somewhat taken a toll upon me as I edit and hear it many times over. Anyway, we're going to talk about the LVO, but not the tournament, silly. Oh no, because there's plenty of other places which love to talk about competitive 40k that will drown you in information about how armies of Iron Hand Space Marines slowly move around L shapes, hardly killing each other. No. We are going to talk about the real exciting stuff from the LVO, which was Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 models and or literature-themed reveals. And joining me to deliver this series of bits of information is good old Phil.
It is indeed.
And the beautiful Joe. How's it going, Joe?
I have to say, that's probably the most real thing that you've ever said about ITC.
What's that?
The glacial game of two rocks just slowly crumbling against each other around L-shaped buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really, really enjoy watching competitive games of 40k. But when that big old L-shape and line-of-sight blocking piece of terrain comes in effect, I swear the game takes on a form that I barely recognise. It just turns into such a very odd game, doesn't it, when it turns into that?
It's like one of those, like, 80s like films where they've got like cops shooting out robbers and they're like in a corridor, and it's almost like in like National Lampoons or the loaded gun ones where they're literally like a meter away from each other, just popping their head out, shooting, and then going back in and missing each other wildly, kind of stuff. That's what the top 100 tables of the LVO were, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assertion. Lots and lots of very sturdy, hard-to-kill mountains of Space Marines wrapped in L-shaped clean fill. So God bless them all. I was especially entertained by the final game of the LVO for the championship of winning the ITC and subsequently the LVO itself, where the Leviathan Dreadnought tanked an ungodly amount of grav cannon wounds. I mean, that if ever there was an illustration for how busted that Leviathan character with all the special rules is, I think that was that, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel like Games Workshop are going to go away from this event and be like, we made a mistake with the Space Marines. Like, something somewhere went horribly wrong. And now we've just created a monster that we can no longer deal with. And it's terrorizing the town. Because, it's just like, I don't know how other armies are supposed to deal with like Space Marines at the moment. I know we said we weren't going to talk about competitiveness, but games come into this weird situation where you either want to win or you cannot stand to look at another Space Marine. That's the two parties that are left, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty reasonable. I think the only thing that was entertaining to me was that in the live stream, the team of Frankie and Reese referred to whatever that thing is where the Iron Hand Space Marines throw themselves in front of the bullets and die as Lookout Sir. Because obviously, historically, Lookout Sir was a 40k rule. So I had a little fleeting moment of amusement thinking, I wonder if that will positively impact our algorithm and whether we'll get extra traffic because the LVO final featured the words...
Because people are going to start Googling Lookout Sir.
Yeah, what is this Lookout Sir they speak of? And maybe if you're one of those people that happened upon us because you heard them say Lookout Sir during an LVO finals game, welcome. Don't worry, we don't talk about this for much longer. So please feel free to go.
You saying we need to update our little icon of the man to be an Iron Hand Space Marine?
I mean, I mean, to be honest with you, though, based on the way most of the competitive players are representing Iron Hands, we could just say it's an Iron Hand, or maybe just put like a label on him going, really, I'm an Iron Hand.
I might be painted red and not black and have Blood Angel symbols on me. Definitely an Iron Hand.
God, yeah, he definitely was going to be taking some Death Company intercessors before he realised that he was silly.
Yeah.
God bless him so. But look, anyway, as I say, you can go plenty of other places to hear people talk about the competitive nuances of the ITC Warhammer 40,000 hobby. And to be honest with you, we actually talk about that ourselves because, you know, I don't necessarily know the order these things are going to appear on. We've either already talked about it or are about to talk about the Bournemouth Grand Tournament where we talk about ITC stuff and armies and things. So, you know, we're kind of getting on board the old ITC train just a little bit.
But like when you go to the pub and you end up meeting a bunch of manly lads and they're like footballers' names, football, and you're like, who? We're still at that kind of phase when it comes to like ITC, and everyone's like, this guy, Mr. Siegler, blah blah blah, Nedavadi, and blah blah blah, and you're like, you're saying words to me, and I know that these people exist on the realm of Earth. I don't know them, and I have no idea what they do.
Exactly. But
yes.
For some reason, I want them to all be my bestest friends.
Yeah.
And let me into the inner circle that is their strange and guarded world.
Pretty much.
Absolutely. All right, anyway, look, let's talk about the previews that took place, because that's what we care about. Now, from the outset, we're not necessarily going to talk about all the beautiful AOS stuff that was announced at the LVO, because this is a Warhammer 40,000 podcast, and we don't really necessarily feel like we should get into a massive rant about Age of Sigmar related stuff. But good golly, aren't those elves pretty?
They are Gert Lush, and I am totally getting the man that's not a man is just armor, and I'm going to be converting him into an Archon. I think definite.
I'm sure you're not the only one. I think quite a few people have had that idea already because it's a stunning model.
Oh god, yeah.
I like the fact that he is sort of, yet again, another one of those characters that is sort of referred to that I don't really know all that well. At first I thought it was going to be Prince Tyrion, because I remember him. But he is old Teclis, I believe, is this fella in question, who I swear I remember as... Oh, no, sorry, Teclis is the... He's the god character, isn't he? Sorry, I've got myself all wrapped up in weird little loops. Teclis is the cool dude with the Sphinx. Who's this guy?
This is... I don't know, because Games Workshop did another one of those things where they're like, we're going to bring back that cool character that everyone knows and beloves, and he's just so well loved. Like, I can't believe that he's finally coming out. But the only people that know about him are at least in their mid to late 40s and read the 3rd edition like Warhammer Fantasy Elf Battle Tome, and there was like one of those weird little like brown or grey boxes that have like a weird little bit of fluff story or a quote, and it once quoted about this mystical ghost warrior armor thing, and that's the only time it was referenced. It's like when they brought out what is it, old
Belisarius Cool.
Belisarius Cool. They're like, oh, they're bringing back this like beloved character from Heresy, and they're like, Belisarius Cool, and you're like, who? And they're like, oh no, they don't know who he is. So quickly shoehorn him into a Heresy book so he becomes canon like overnight.
Wait, that was interesting because everyone assumed it was going to be Arkham Land.
Yeah, or Scoia. This was before the Scoia model actually came out at Forge World.
You have a similar thing with that new Dangles character as well, don't you? Old Lazarus. Oh, Lazarus is coming back. It's like...
You mean who looks exactly like Azrael, is armed exactly the same way as Azrael would be armed if he was Primera.
Yes, that is true. That is one of those ones where they clearly lost their nerve and just went, no, Lazarus, that'll do. Dear, oh dear. But anyway, these new elves are quite pretty. Old Cousin Boneless and his lack of bones or any kind of muscly sinews or flesh for that matter is quite pretty. And then obviously old Teclis. How am I supposed to actually be saying his name?
Teclis. I've always said Teclis.
Teclis.
I really like that. Yeah, Teclis. But why isn't he riding it? Why is he just hovering next to it?
Exactly. It all seems a little bit
he's showing off his power by flying.
Yeah, but that's like having a motorbike and pushing it everywhere.
I don't know, man. Maybe
it's like having a motorbike and then flying 4 foot in the air above it, but you've still got the motorbike to show off.
Maybe it's like one of those like really angry feral cats that you meet when you go on holiday to Spain, and you're like, oh look, a kitty, and then it mauls you, but it just kind of follows you around everywhere because you fed it.
When I went on holiday in Spain, I didn't encounter any wild feral cats, I have to be honest with you.
Maybe that's just the thing I do. Like, everywhere I go, I always end up, like stealing someone's cat. Not stealing, I just like, oh, a cat, I'll feed it, because I'm an idiot. And then it seems to live outside my hotel room forever.
Well, you do have a heavy cat aroma, to be honest with you. You know, that will probably be what attracts them to you.
You do make it sound like I bathe in cat wee, but I don't really.
No. Just feces.
Just like a nice cat bath every morning.
Rub it all over myself. You're going to get the old toxic plasmosis, mate.
Oh, God.
You're going to start being attracted to the cats, and then you're going to be found dead with them eating you. That's probably like one of those reoccurring nightmares that will hit me in my like late 50s. And no one loves me apart from my 20 cats that I've stolen from people's houses in local neighbourhoods. Your daughter has long outgrown you, left you alone. Now all you have is the cats. I have to admit, though, actually, Joe, I woke up about 3 a.m. last night with a complete empty sense of hopelessness. So, you know.
Because you don't have a cat.
I suppose that's what it was. On the topic of, a bleak sense of hopelessness, how incredible... this segue doesn't work at all. I just needed something to kind of move it off of the kind of weird tangent we've gone on. How incredible is the Zote trailer? The sweaty, hairy bloke who goes, "What about Zotes?" I mean, how is that not a meme?
The only person in that room who actually remembers who that elf character is as well.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah, that's it. He's the one that is leading the charge with these.
He reminds me of the greatest thing about Hero Quest man, in a way.
Oh, what you mean? The best thing about Hero Quest?
Yeah, Brawl Swords guy.
I mean, what I love is, it's like so if you can, I'm going to have to paint a picture with words here, but if you could imagine a kind of 1970s hair metal singer who's let himself go over the course of 20 years, so obviously you can't necessarily use time as a construct for this, because ultimately now I'm talking about a period of time in around the mid-90s, I suppose. But, you know, it's about 20 years on from the glory years of hair metal. You're still rocking the look, but, you know, ultimately age has withered the body of your hair, as it were, and you're more beard and belly now than anything else. Imagine if that person had been baked in the sun for about 3 days, and then for whatever reason felt like the best way of counteracting their red extreme skin complexion was to wear nothing but red clothing, thus ultimately turning him into something of a walking saw. Imagine that. Shouting out.
You're being a bit harsh, Stan.
Well, I'm trying to explain him in the most vivid way possible. And don't get me wrong, I love this guy. I aspire to be this man. I mean, dear God, if I look as good as he does in a couple of years' time, I'll be very happy with myself.
He's like a ruddy-faced farmer that got lost on his way back from a Led Zeppelin concert.
Yes! God, Joe, you should have done it, see? I kind of over-elaborated on the whole thing. I just love him. He is the best thing from the whole LVO release. The Zote itself, I don't care. But this guy, I don't know who he is. I don't know what he does. I assume he works in the marketing department in some way, shape or form.
I think he's one of the games writers.
Is he?
Because he's been in some developer videos from previous stuff. So I don't know if he's specialist games. I think he might be. I've seen him around at Warhammer World a few times.
He might be related to James Workshop, potentially. They've got the same kind of heritage.
I think, Joe, you could cosplay this guy perfectly. I think if you got the mullet, you could absolutely rock that look.
So, but I'd only be able to do it at Warhammer-based events.
Yeah, but what other events do you go to?
I suppose, yeah.
Well, you could be going around with a Zote and going, "What about Zotes?"
What about Zotes?
And you've got the kind
speaking of which, what do you actually think about the Zote as a model?
Oh, it's awful. I don't like it still.
Are you off your head, Joe? How can you say that's awful?
All right. Okay, I'll rephrase.
Okay.
I don't like it. It's a very nice model in terms of it's been made with a lot of love and passion, and all new Games Workshop models are made incredibly well. I am just not happy with the aesthetics of it. Is that better?
I mean, it doesn't innately look very 40k, but I think that's the idea because it's strange Xenos technology.
Yeah.
I adore it. I think more power to them. It's sort of in very similar sort of profile to that of a Bolgrin or a Ogrin or whatever you want to say, but obviously with more additional lizard features. I like the fact that it's gone for more of a kind of sort of four-legged herbivore-style centaur-type vibe to the thing. I think the paint job on it really, really brings it to life in a really cool way. I think its gun is absolute sci-fi madness. I mean, this to me is the sort of classic 80s sci-fi nonsense, isn't it? Where literally you get a lizard and you just chuck whatever kind of misplaced nonsense on it you can. I just love it.
It's like someone got an old school Dino Rider and then just stapled a bunch of tat to it. But
which in many respects is all Dino Riders actually were.
Yeah, but I'm a firm believer that like that old school stuff kind of needs to stay in the past.
Really?
It just not like I'm not like being more militant about it. It's just that they've killed those races off now, and they've moved on, kind of thing. And they look too 80s because that's when they were designed. When everything was a Pink Floyd album, but basically made in miniature form.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a level of like cheesiness to the concept of Zotes overall.
Yeah. It just doesn't fit the new like aesthetic that GW's going for their models.
Maybe it's not meant to though. I sort of think the whole Black Stone Fortress and Necromunda stuff is a way of exploring those outer periphery edges of 40k without it being within 40k. It's like
the next thing they're going to do is bring in one of those, the Demiurge, whatever it's called, the time-bending ones.
I want to see the mega arachnids. That's what you want. Yeah. Those crazy buggers.
It's like Blackstone Fortress is becoming like lip service to like the
80s.
The 80s, yeah.
But I think that's great.
It does seem like they are. I mean, for the last like 2-3 years, they've definitely been flicking through their old Rogue Trader, randomly stopping on a page and going, right, we're going to make this. So obviously you got things like Gene Stealer Cult coming back, Squats coming back through Necromunda, Amble, that was another more recent one. And weirdly, the Ambot got created completely separately from the Amble because they were two different parts of the company, and Warhammer World, they confessed that it was just a massive coincidence that they created them around the same time. So that's why they released them sort of together.
They lucked out that they were of the same sort of profile. And the same. I mean, they must have at least hooked up at one point and gone, all right, well, we better scale these so as they look sort of like they belong.
I'm a big fan of the Ambot, actually.
Oh, that's he likes the Ambot, but not the Zote.
Yeah. And the Amble. He's cool.
The Amble is cool. I prefer the worms.
The worms. You've got worms, but...
I mean, I may well do. But, you know, no one needs to necessarily hear about my collection of worms. But no, look, Zote for me, thumbs up. I like it. I think, you know, the more we see of these mad 80s miniatures, the better. And ultimately, they're delivered in the best way possible. They're one-offs. They are there to service the fans and to ultimately expand the lore, and I think that's really exciting. And again, Blackstone Fortress is a great game. You know, not necessarily one I play a load, but yeah, it's cool to see. What do you think, Joe, in closing on Zote?
It's a nice model, but it's not for me.
Fair enough. Phil?
Yeah, I'm a fan. It's a bit cheesy, I get Joe's point. But overall, it's a cool concept to see, and hopefully they'll be doing more sort of these kind of crazy one-offs.
The Zote has got your vote, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I let that one roll around my head for a little bit too long and then realised that it was not nearly as funny as I hoped it would be. But, you know, I was hoping to at least get a snigger out of someone for that, but not even that. But anyway, all right, there you go, the Zote. And apologies to the lovely fella who announces What About Zotes. I meant it all out of love. I think you're a wonderful human being. and I applaud your passion for Zotes. Anyway, moving right along, let's talk about the Adeptus Mechanicus. So for those of you who haven't been following along at home, you may or may not already be aware of the fact that they were given a snazzy new flyer in a reveal recently. A flyer with very weird kind of, old school, sort of biplane-esque wings. Probably more kind of Leonardo da Vinci style inspired mechanics going on there. But what's been really cool about that flyer, as time has gone on, is now with the further reveal of even more Mechanicus stuff, all of this starts to feel like it makes a little bit more sense, as we have now been revealed new flying Scutari and new Scutari cavalry. So why don't we talk about the cavalry first? Phil, you're our, cavalry man. What's your opinion of these?
I like them. They've kind of got a cool aesthetic to them. They don't necessarily feel very Adeptus Mechanicus.
Really?
And, well, they do and they don't, because they clearly are. But the concept of it looks like a horse and it sort of is a horse is very different from the rest of the range of kind of the existing Adeptus Mechanicus. Looks very different to this. Sort of all the new stuff looks very similar to each other. Obviously, especially the Archaeothopter and the new flying guys. But this, for example, doesn't look very similar to the the chicken-legged walker?
The Dragoons.
The Dragoons, yeah. They sort of feel like they're almost similar, but very completely different in terms of the worlds that they're on. This is definitely a bit more of a sort of gunslinger, cowboy-esque vibe. I think I do like it though. I mean, they're cool models. Cavalry that isn't necessarily just knights or like the Death Riders where they've got lances. The fact that they're effectively just mounted footmen. So they've got guns rather than close combat weapons, I think is a cool concept for sure. I guess it's closely similar to the biker guys from the Gene Stealer cult.
What do you think, Joe?
Oh, I absolutely love them. I think they are amazing. Because I think the route they're going down with Mechanicum now is like they've gone to this weird discovery stage and they're looking at things from the past. And I feel like at some point they've picked up like a DVD or an MP3 player or a Blu-ray and it's got like the Magnificent Seven on it. And they've gone, cowboys are really flipping cool. And they've looked at these horses and they've gone, these horses are clearly the ones in charge here. Why else would they carry these insignificant tiny men on them? And they've kind of rebuilt them and gone from there. They've had and I think that the route they're going down is this weird kind of like outlandish, like almost like Firefly in a way. The kind of like the idea of some of like the 40k stuff that's going on. Because if you look at the Kill Team boxes that came around before Vigilus, it was the Gene Stealer cults with the pistol guy versus Admech in this weird kind of like frontier land. And this additional stuff really kind of like puts that into perspective. And I think because you've got the new book that's going to have them both in, I think, and GW's definitely needs to do a display where it's kind of be like almost like a post-apocalyptic world. So you've got like the Gene Stealer bike gangs and buggies driving around fighting Mad Max style with these mechanical horses and like fast moving skimmer tugboat things.
Do we know if they're actually horses or are they unfortunate human beings that have been shaped into horses?
I think they're 100% going to be servitors.
Yeah, I get the feeling as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was going to say it looks like part of them is actually a horse, like the body bit, but then actually on closer inspection, it all looks mechanical.
Yeah.
Which,
Do you reckon it's like two people chopped up and turned into a robot horse?
Yeah. Or because obviously none of the riders are actually using their hands to control them. So I think it might be a case that they're actually linked, and maybe the Skitarii Ranger or Vanguard is actually controlling it with their mind.
I mean, what's been really cool recently with a lot of the GW releases around the new kits that they do is they've always put little kind of like nods to the mechanics behind the miniature, and so like with the Abaddon stuff, they had all the kind of inner workings of his armor. It'd be really cool when you assemble this if you realise that actually there's like a little servitor head that then kind of plops into the rib cage of this overall construct or something, just to be a little bit grim.
The bit that this model feels like it's perhaps missing is that kind of creepy lobotomized human that they're controlling, because it looks like they've just taken a horse and chopped its legs off.
Well, is it the one that the Vanguard
how they look
ride? Yeah, the one that the Vanguard ride, who are my favourites, the guys with two pistols.
Well, one of them's got two pistols.
One of them's got two pistols. But I like the fact that they've got like neckerchiefs as well. And the Vanguard ones, they're actually, it looks like they're actually flamers, the horse heads.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the flamer heads. I prefer
fire-breathing horse, Phil, that's actually two people sewn together in a horse costume. Come on!
I like the idea that in their heads, that's what the Mechanicum thought that they did.
Oh, could you imagine?
In Master of Mankind, Arkan Land is there, and he's got a little mechanical monkey that follows him around. And he's like, they're like, what's the tail for? And he's like, well, clearly it was to administer poison on its enemies, kind of thing. I think that's the cool little thing about the Mechanicus. They completely misread everything because they think everything's supposed to be a weapon.
Could you imagine that the Mechanicus found a diagram for a pantomime horse and they went, yes, that's what we need. Yeah. Pantomime horses all around, breathing fire.
Well, because the weird thing about the June Crawler was that the nickname of it was Mule, because obviously they'd heard about this four-legged creature that travels across the wasteland carrying things. Yeah. And that's why their recreation of it is the June Crawler. But then that sort of doesn't make sense when you've got these, which are clearly horses, which is very similar to a mule.
But maybe they don't know. Maybe they just don't know that. Maybe to them it's something entirely different.
Maybe they, like I said, they just found a DVD of a cowboy movie and like, let's make these.
I mean, I really like them. I think for me, it's just really amazing to see the direction that the team are taking the Mechanicus, because the range has been really piecemeal up to this point. I mean, the origins of Mechanicus as a range was Imperial Knights, followed by Skitarii, followed by Adeptus Mechanicus as individual books. And then, obviously, at the beginning of 8th edition, the three factions kind of got smashed into one. But I think stuff like this is really helping expand and start to turn it into a much more coherent range. Obviously, there's still a number of like characters, like the Tech Priest that comes with Blackstone Fortress, as well as the Dominus, or not the Dominus, but he's like some of a variant of Tech Priest that comes with Kill Team. So they are still a little bit all over the place, but hopefully when this book drops, it'll bring them all together in a nice, exciting way.
And also, like with the new ruling that that you don't get your Forge World traits, do you, if you soup?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they put that rule in knowing this was coming out. So to releasing these new jump pack guys, the new flyer, and these outriders and stuff really flushes them out with choices within the army.
Oh yeah, they've now got a huge array of stuff, like pretty much everything you need from an army to be versatile enough to do everything. They've pretty much got now. Or we'll have when this all comes out.
On the topic of the new jumpy guys, what do we think of the new jumpy guys, Joe?
They're amazing as well. I love them. Everything about the new Mechanicum I love. Just assume that if you say Mechanicum, Joe's going to love it.
I mean, I'm slightly dubious about the fact that it's yet another miniature using the new flying stand, which is always a little bit terrible.
But you can mitigate that by having them like on scenery and stuff. One of them does look like he's taking them, he's propelling himself through the air by farting. Like he's like the one with the flame has just got his legs flailing around in the sky.
It's because he's attacking. He's going to attack and land on something.
He's landing, but his opponent that he looks supposed to be landing on isn't there, so it looks like he's doing this kind of mid-air farty boob grab.
Well, I suppose as well though, because suspiciously the stem of his flying base is much darker. It looks like he's doing a very oily poo, like he's propelling himself.
It's weird they painted that one black, and obviously didn't with the others.
I think it's just the way the photography would have worked out. I think it would have just been like reflecting off of something or something along those lines, and they just sort of went with it. But it definitely does look like he's propelling himself on a jet of quite aggressive, oily discharge.
The pooping aside, I think they're great. Like they've got because the weapon options for them look amazing. So you got the flamer guy, there's a guy with a pistol, and there's a guy who looks like he's got a massive silenced Uzi kind of thing, which looks really cool. Or it looks like
some grenades, I think. Yeah. And the other guy's got a pistol and a taser goad.
Yeah, and they're really good. They kind of remind me of the Hawk guy from the Spider-Man movie.
Vulture?
The Vulture,
yeah, it's definitely got that vibe. I mean, and as we know from the infiltrators that the Mechanicum have already, that sort of repeater pistol can be pretty terrifying. I mean, if it's the same as the ones those guys have with the 5 shots, fair enough, it's only strength 3, but flipping heck, does it do some damage, especially with that mortal wound stratagem that they got. Absolute insanity. No, I love them. I absolutely love them. I think, again, it's another really great addition to the Mechanicus range that I'm really excited to get my teeth into. I think it's really good.
There's another picture in the video where you see all the units together as an army, like with the plane and the new tugboat and them and the horse guys and the infantry. It really does come together. It's kind of like when they released the Repulsor, and it was just like they just basically released a microwave with some guns on it. But when you see it in a whole Space Marine army, it does look really good, and it makes sense. And I like the fact that they've actually given the Mechanicum like the feeling. They like almost like Necron. They were a very cold army. There was no emotion.
Phil, closing thoughts on this lovely new selection of Mechanicum stuff? Are you as excited or interested as myself and Joe?
I think so, but maybe not quite as much. I mean, I sort of like and dislike the kind of the Leonardo da Vinci style wings. It's like I get it. I kind of get why, but for some reason I just don't like them. I don't know if it's because they're a bit spindly and they feel like they're missing the robustness that you sort of normally get with 40k. But then AdMech's always been about not being bulky and relying on armor. And it's like if you look at the Horus Heresy range, it's like they're all very delicate tanks because they've all got shield generators and stuff. So I do feel like it fleshes out the range more and it makes it look a bit more cohesive. I do sort of think the sort of tugboat World War II landing craft vehicle seems to be a bit of an outlier in the range in terms of that looks very distinct from everything else in the range. Whereas this, at least, I like how this ties in with the Archaeopter. Like, they've got those same kind of Da Vinci wings, and I said at that time that I wasn't a huge fan of it, but at least it's tied together a bit more. The guys with the rifle and the taser golden pistol I like more than the flamer guy. But they're cool models. I'd like to see what the whole unit looks like together. And these things always tend to grow on me. Like, my initial reaction when I see a photo tends to be like, well, it's not very good. And then by the time we're at Warhammer World and we've seen the painted model in the flesh, I'm like, oh my God, I love it. So, give it time and it'll stew, and I'll be a fan, I'm sure.
I definitely got that with the new range of Necromunda fellas, the sort of big, bulky, blood-obsessed loonies, the corpse grinders or something, I think they were called.
Yeah, corpse grinders, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like them at first, but after I saw that display at Warhammer World with them mushing up bodies and being all kind of crazy hardcore with their dedication to slaughter, I was like, ooh, actually, I can get behind these guys. That's pretty cool.
I mean, I will look forward to the day when I get to go up against, with my Krieg, some of these horses, Yadmec horses, so we could have a bit of a cavalry off, so we can see who's got the best ones.
I mean, for me...
Clearly the horses with heavy flamers would be.
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah, clearly the horses with that breathe fire are going to have a bit of an advantage. For me, I just love the fact that we're seeing new cavalry units. Obviously, we got very kind of mild cavalry units in Genestealer Cult in the form of their new bikers, although they're not really cavalry-esque as such, as they're more kind of outrider type sneaky buggers that turn up and just seem to throw satchel charges at you or snipe you from a distance and so on and so forth. But these guys feel really, really interesting, and I think the cavalry unit has been one of the least well, addressed units within 40k. I mean, really, obviously there's the Rough Rider, the Death Rider variant for Krieg, the variants of bikes that are out there, but in terms of actually having like a mount, like an actual creature that you ride on, the cavalry have really kind of fallen off. Obviously the most famous ones were the Thunderwolf cavalry, but those have kind of fallen out of favour recently, and it's just really cool to see them again.
It's quite interesting that at the same time as these ones, they've released the cavalry for the new elf range for Age of Sigmar, and they sort of made a really big point about the fact that in the fantastic world of Age of Sigmar, where there's lots of cavalry, but it tends to be riding monsters of all different sorts. This is the first time where they've gone for that classic horse cavalry. And then they've also sort of done it here as well with Admech as well. So it's interesting timing that they've done sort of two different types of horse cavalry for the two different game systems.
Do you find with the elf ones that there's a couple? So if you look at the picture of the elves, front, middle, and front right,
yes,
they've got a real sort of prance on, haven't they?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, maybe at a full stride, but horses normally tend to have a bit of a bent leg.
Yeah.
And the fact that those two is clearly the same model.
Yeah.
Those two look a bit silly with the leg strutting forwards, very straight.
They're doing a bit of dressage.
No, I spotted that and I thought that looks a bit weird.
I love them. I think they're just so... I mean, they'll look great, but it is just one of those funny little things. Like, if you could paint, like, derpy eyes on those particular horses, or maybe this would be one of the best reasons to get some of those, googly eyes that you could stick on the model, just to sort of really bring it to life. On the topic of bringing it to life, these segues are on point today. I could only be talking about the return of one of the finest orc heroes to ever grace the game of Warhammer 40,000. And I'm talking, of course, about the greenskin known as Makari. So, for those of you who weren't already aware, Makari has been Gazkol's banner bearer since the good old days of Warhammer 40,000 2nd edition. And I have a lot of very fond memories of Makari, because in my early experiences of Warhammer 40,000, I was playing Elder, but the guy I played against most frequently was my mate Rob, who ran Orcs, and he adored Makari and Gazkol. So to see Makari come back is something quite special for me. I think it's absolutely phenomenal that GW is bringing back this iconic unit, and I pray that he will still have his 2-up invulnerable save of incredible luck. What do you reckon, Phil, of old Bakari?
Well, I think the elephant in the room is that Gazgol is also going to be joining him.
I mean, potentially. Who could say? I mean, there were very few hints given to the return of Gazgol.
I mean, except he was like the big thing in the background of the close-up shots.
I mean, potentially. I mean, I hear you say these things, but you can't be certain. That could be anyone's claw.
No, well, I know. I mean, it could be a bit of a gotcha where it's no longer Gazgol and it's some other new, unnamed but now named character. But it would almost 99% be Gazgol.
I think it's fairly likely that if Makari is coming back, that Gazgol is coming with him. What would be interesting from a fluff perspective for me is the idea that the Gazgol that we've had for the last however many years of fluff and lore is actually a pretender, and that the real Gazgol has been away with Makari doing something and has come back and is kind of like turned up and is this hulking great war boss that sort of slaps aside the pretender that has been the Gazgol we've had for the last, well, crikey, 20 years? Or not 20 years, probably more like 17 years, but that'd be quite an interesting little twist to explain why he's come back.
Is that because Makari hasn't been around for the last few versions of the Gazgol model?
That's correct, yeah. I don't know, what do you think, Joe?
I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. I kind of want them just to turn around and be like, you know how you complained that you didn't get anything during October? Well, guess what? You've got to wait. You've got to wait 8 months, 9 months to get it.
I mean, that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
Although they'd still, obviously, they would complain even more about having to wait to another October, especially obviously now as it's been revealed.
Yeah, or they'll release Bakari on his own in a blister pack, and then you have to wait.
I would love that. Like one of those old... do you ever remember, or did you ever hear the story about when, I think it was Kenner, got the license for Star Wars, and they realised they couldn't get Star Wars figures made for Christmas. So they did this really bold gift voucher strategy where you got a kid this playset box set that basically said, you'll get these action figures as soon as they come out for Christmas. Maybe that's what Makari is. You buy Makari, he's for like 50 quid or whatever he is, and you just get him, and it's like, some point in the next 6 months, you'll get Gazgol, which would be pretty hilarious. Yeah. No, I love him, man. I think, again, I was having a conversation with someone in a Games Workshop store in Reading a few weeks back. I was like, I'd love to see him bring back Makari. And I think, obviously, if he gets his 2-up invuln, I think that's going to be super cool. And if it's like the Archon 2-up invuln that cannot be re-rolled for any reason, I think that will be absolutely stupendous. I think that's just going to be fantastic. So no, I'm grateful to see him come back.
Or he works like Grot Shields.
Oh, even better. A Grot Shield with a 2-up invuln.
Yeah.
Good lord, could you imagine? Him and the Red Gobbo. Oh, what a combo. You put stick bombs on him.
Yeah, because orcs don't really have a survivable unit, which is the hilarious thing. So having this like unkillable warlord who's got this little imp just bouncing around in front of him for the entire game would be hilarious.
Yeah, because what would be quite funny is like Makari. If Makari doesn't have the character keyword, that could be a really interesting mechanic. Because then obviously all of a sudden you get this 1 wound 2-up invuln guy that can stand in front of Gazgol. And because he's not a character, you have to shoot at him before you can get to Gazgol.
Yeah, that would be quite hilarious.
Which would be amazing. Although, based on the potential scale of Gazgol, the idea that he won't have 10 or more wounds is probably a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, he's got to be Gilliman stats, really.
100%, man. If this guy doesn't go kind of toe-to-toe with the Abaddon or Gilliman's scale of miniatures, then that is just a massive mistake.
But both of them still have a character keyword and can't be targeted because they're under the 10 wounds.
He's right, isn't he? When he's right, he's right. So there you go. We could have yet another contender to the super character throne. Although, to be fair, Abaddon can't necessarily hold a candle to Gilliman in a fight. I think Gilliman, in most instances, just slaps him to one side.
It's one of those weird situations on whoever goes first kind of thing.
No. Just Gilliman wins all the time.
Oh.
Against Marnius Calgar, it's 50-50. The problem with Abaddon is Abaddon's been made to the scale of Gilliman, but he's been made roughly the same as Marnius Calgar.
Oh.
Which is super weird. Like, the scale doesn't fit, the rules. But anyway, there you go. No, it's amazing to see the return of Gazcol, though. This is one of those miniatures that, I think everyone's happy to see an iconic character such as Gazcol get a triumphant return. I think he's one of those characters that is so etched into the history of Warhammer 40,000. He's such an iconic character. Now all we need to see is a new Commissar Yarrick to go alongside him, right?
Well, that would be quite tasty.
Yeah, like a new non-fine cast plastic Commissar Yarrick would be absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the current one's not too bad in terms of design. I do remember having the very old original metal one with the little kind of crab claw.
The crab claw.
I did love him, and I loved his little banner with the kind of the motif of him fighting Gazgol in the... was it Gazgol that he was fighting where he got his arm, or was that...
no, that was just another war boss.
Yes.
I think what they need, because obviously they like releasing their big units now, looking at the old St. Catherine model. I think if they're going to release... what's his face? What's his name?
Yarrick,
yeah. They're going to release Yarrick. They've got to release him on his Fortress of Arrogance Baneblade.
and that's just the base.
And that's just the base, yeah.
yeah. And then, like Sergeant Kronos, when it blows up, he gets out.
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant. And you don't get Slay the Warlord until you kill him on his own.
Yeah.
Amazing. And he refuses to die because he'll have a 2-up Feel No Pain re-rolling ones or something.
It will be ridiculous, whatever they give him.
Well, if they want to do him well, that's the way you got to do. But, no, I mean, honestly, fair play to the LVO. That is an incredible set of reveals that they did.
Hold on. You've missed two more. One of which is the most important reveal.
Oh, please enlighten me. What have I missed?
We need to scroll down until you get to the Forge World section.
Yeah, but that's Horus Heresy. We don't talk about Horus Heresy here, do we?
This is 40k. This is the Forge World 40k indexes will be disappearing, and a new set of mysterious books will be arriving. So the beloved Krieg might get some kind of rules from on high.
Oh my God!
But it'll be interesting to see what they put into Legends as well, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that they don't sell anymore that's still in the index.
Yes, so the Legions don't exist anymore, and then Renegades and Heretics are mostly the Tractor Guard line's just all gone, although weirdly they've sort of reintroduced them through the Blackstone Fortress. So it'd be interesting to see how they tie those two. And
wink, wink, LVO, Forge World don't sell the Chaplain Dreadnought anymore.
Yes.
His days might be numbered.
I think as well, though, right? There's a lot of random characters in the Forge World indexes that are getting a lot of really good leverage. There's the character for is it the Reapers or the Reavers? The chapter.
There's the one for the Raptors.
Raptors, that's the words I couldn't find. Yeah, so he's getting quite a lot of love. And then there's another one, although I don't know if this is a Codex one or a Forge World one, but it's the one that essentially all of the possessed bombs are using, because he's a character that can deploy like a Nurgling.
I don't know. I think I know who you mean, and I think he is He is a 4-drop one, yeah.
I think he is.
Unless if they're using Alpha Legion, you can just use the stratagem to allow him to move forward for free.
Yeah, but I think the thing is with this is that you can move forwards 9, but then there's this particular character deploys like a scout / nurgling, so he can go within 9 of a deployment zone.
There is a 4-drop Alpha Legion character.
That's probably who it is, because the way they're building it is essentially you take the nurglings and then screen with nurglings, but do it in a way that you can't actually draw line of sight to them, and then you just put this character out in the open. And then you put on the Plague Bearer bomb, not the Plague Bearer bomb, sorry, the Possessed bomb. You can't shoot these guys unless they're the closest unit. And then the only unit you can shoot is a character that you can't actually shoot because the closest units are some nurglings that you can't see. And even if you can shoot him, he's -3 to hit.
Yeah, I imagine that's going to get FAQ'd because that kind of rule has been sort of pitched for a while as a concept, because I think you can even do that with one of the Space Marine stratagems as well. But basically, I don't think you should be allowed to screen with a character when it comes to those sorts of rules. So hopefully it'll get an FAQ to fix it.
It won't. It'll just be 9th edition now, surely. That'll be the way it goes. We just got to endure it for another 6 months and then...
I don't think so, because I think... all the books are still going to be valid. All the codexes are going to be valid, but they will re-release them in a more consolidated fashion.
I think what we're looking at now is that all this Psychic Awakening is basically like a gap filler, basically bringing all the codexes in line of power, although they seem to have completely overshot that massively, and just gone... and just got like, we're going to future-proof these, and then in late summer, like mid-autumn kind of thing, we'll release 9th edition, and then we'll start to release the new codexes. So the Space Marine Codex is the first of those. So you won't see an update to that for ages, and like things like Space Marine Codex 2 will just become Space Marine Codex, or Chaos Space Marine Codex, and then you'll get like the new Drakari, the new Craft World, the new Harlequins Codex is coming out then.
But most importantly, before that, Joe, we might have Codex Krieg. That's what Phil's most excited about.
Well, we might do. I mean, it could just be a revised version of the indexes that are a bit more fleshed out, like the old Imperial Armour books that were specific. So you might get one for Space Marines, one for Imperial Guard, and then one for Xenos. Or what they might do is some kind of more campaigny style books, where they flesh it all out. But I think that's the thing. Who knows what sort of format they're going to do it in?
They said that it's being headed up by the team they're bringing out Psychic Awakening. So yeah. Part of me thinks that it's going to be campaign books.
I mean, they've done Vigilus. There was the little-known book to do with the... Oh, God, what was it called now? It was the Black Library campaign book. Oh, in fact, I've got it on the shelf, so let me have a look for it quickly.
All right, no worries.
It's the Sabbat Worlds Crusade book, which is like a sort of weird art and lore book that is very reminiscent to the Forge World campaign books in terms of like a lot of those old side profile artworks of vehicles and stuff are in there, but they've all been redone. And that's fantastic. It's like how a campaign book should be, because it looks like the Vigilus one, but 10 times better. But the only thing it doesn't have any rules in it, and it doesn't have a campaign. It's just a sort of historical fake book to do with the kind of Dan Abnett series of like Gaunt's Ghosts and stuff. So if they could do something that is along those lines, where it's like a really like high quality campaign book, but obviously with all the rules in it as well for, you know, whether it's Siege of Vrax or some other new campaign, I'd be quite happy to see something new rather than retreading old ground.
Well, whatever Krieg get, Phil, I'm sure we'll do a comprehensive chat about Krieg. We'll do it, Phil, when it happens.
It'll be a free podcast, a free episode podcast.
Bloody hell, a free episode podcast is what you're going for.
People will love it.
Yeah, it'll be the Phil show.
It will be. That will be. It will actually just be one episode.
And Phil can do a Dan where me and Dan just mute ourselves and just let him waffle on for 3 hours straight, and then unmute ourselves when you ask us a question.
Brilliant.
Yep. That has been the established format for much time, and I'm happy to let Phil do that. I think I don't know. I almost sort of feel like we should have like a Phil story corner or a Phil Krieg connection.
Well, didn't you come up with some kind of, was it hobby hour or something?
Oh yeah, we're pitching that as a potential segment, aren't we? Tales from the Hobby Shed, but we need to kind of create a suitable jingle and come up with an actual format for that. That's something in the future, potentially, depending on if Phil and Joe like it. I mean, it's one thing for me to come up with these jingles, but, we're a democracy here. Even though I do all the work and pay for everything.
Doesn't that happen in The Walking Dead, where Rick's just flailing a gun around? It's like, we're a democracy. We vote on stuff here. It's like, you are holding the gun. You realise?
Yeah. That's very much what we've become now. I've become more and more Rick as time has gone on. Although I feel like I'm heading into mental breakdown Rick when he was in the prison and had to shoot his wife.
You have to grow a beard. That's when you know Rick's got, like, he's getting his act together.
That's true. Go wander out into the garden and start sobbing. That's gonna be my route to victory. Also on the topic of things that were shown at the LVO, they showed more of the Angels of Death. Do you care?
Oh yeah.
You do? You're on board with it now?
Because last time I was like, the best bit was the bit with the humans in, like the lady that's in it, who I presume is like a naval fleet officer.
I mean, it's highly unlikely she'd be. Well, she must be an officer, but I always assumed that the captains of Blood Angel ships were Blood Angels.
Oh.
But maybe
no, you're right, because they should be, because the Imperial. Interesting.
There's the Imperial Navy, but then there's the Space Marine. So there's like serfs and other kind of people that work for the Space Marines, but they wouldn't be like captains. I mean, obviously they'd be like astropaths and potentially very high-ranking officers that probably like maintain order and do things on the bridge, but you'd assume they wouldn't be in charge.
Well, I think the whole point about the Imperial Navy was so, there couldn't be another Horus Heresy. So, in theory, the people, even though it's a Space Marine designed ship that's very different from the kind of Imperial Guard, Imperial Navy sort of vehicles or ships, I imagine it's still crewed by sort of humans and not Space Marines, because Space Marines are foot soldiers. The captains are captains of the companies. They're not necessarily the commander of the ship. Oh, no, I guess they would be once they're on it.
Yeah, no, to the best of my understanding, there are specific captain Space Marines that are naval officers, essentially. Because obviously Space Marines, in the tabletop game, we spend a lot of time with Space Marines on the floor. But there's an awful lot of fighting that goes on in space. And I mean, even if you think about like some of the most iconic like characters in 40k, like Sigismund, for example. Not Sigismund, sorry. No, Sigismund. Yeah, he, he's the High Marshal of the Black Templars, and he very much is in charge of all the ships. And again, I'm pretty sure. But regardless, I mean, I'm sure the character is going to be interesting, and I genuinely did like Hell's Reach. There's just something about and again, I hate to be negative, but there's something about the kind of quality of certain imagery in this. I think the promo shots that they've published here, there's 2 promo shots. There's fella in Terminator armor, brandishing what I'm guessing is some kind of flaming sword, and then just the face of a Space Marine. But that Terminator picture, it just doesn't look. I mean, I get that he's missing an arm and all the rest of it, but even like his posture, like his head feels like it's falling out of the suit of armor, and You know, his arms are kind of framed really weird. It just doesn't look very good, that image.
I guess it's because it's a still from a video clip, so it's not going to be the best.
Yeah, but you get to pick these, Phil. Like, when you're producing promo material, you didn't have to go, yeah, that's the one. You could have found one that looked better.
It looks like in-game footage from a computer game.
Yeah, but like an 8-year-old computer game.
Yeah, I don't know, because the original video I really slated because the Marines looked awful and the whole style and graphic quality was pretty poor. And I would say the new video is so much better. But I would say the Marines themselves are still weirdly the bit that lets it down. But because I think it's when you've got a man in a helmet talking, it's always this weird sort of, not quite uncanny valley, but it's a discombobulation between the audio and a static helmet that doesn't move. Yeah. Whereas at least they got around it in a few places where the guy just obviously got his helmet off, so you can see the guy inside, and that works a lot better than when Marines have the helmets on.
Yeah, similar kind of issue that I imagine they experienced when they made the Star Wars series, The Mandalorian, right? Like, it's difficult to actually create a character that you care about that spends the entirety of your story wearing a helmet.
Well, I imagine it's just nodding heads, basically.
Yeah, lots of kind of, like, you know, quirky gestures and things like that. And I suppose the problem is, and it'd be interesting, because one of the things that was always a little bit off with the Hell's Reach episodes was the lip syncing was always quite basic, and obviously this guy at the time had much more limited resources. He was just doing it on his own. And again, I have to stress again, I really like Hell's Reach, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he's progressed. It's just with all the talk that goes on around Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 and how much of an incredible IP it is in the world of, you know, sci-fi and fantasy entertainment today. You know, something like this quite early on in its life cycle, it's one of those things where, you know, obviously there's probably going to be a lot of people having conversations about the viability of this IP for, you know, bigger TV series or movies or things of that nature. So something like this coming out may or may not be counterproductive. I don't know. It's one of those.
The problem is, and this is the thing it's probably going to always get compared to, the trailer at the start of Dawn of War 2, which was literally 3 minutes long, was like 10 times better than this, what we've seen. And the trailer at the start of Dawn of War 3 was incredible. Game, terrible. Video, amazing. Like the fight between the two Wraith Lords and the Imperial Knight.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Was mind blowing. The first time I saw that, I just lost all senses. It was just incredible.
Yeah,
watching this was like watching the first of the Shia LaBeouf Transformers films. It's really cool, but they use the darkness to cover up like flaws in the
for sure. Well, that's how I think they're doing it on a budget. Weirdly, yeah. So there's like is it Adeptus Astartes video? That's like
but that's
I would say technically better.
Yeah, but they're very short intervals, and I mean, you know, the thing is, I mean, the guys who made the Dawn of War 3 trailer is a Scottish studio called Axis, and they are a phenomenal studio at producing, you know, 3-5 minute long, beautifully rendered, incredibly high production value trailers. You know, they have done some movie stuff and things like that as well, as far as I'm aware, although I don't know their entire portfolio. But yeah, I mean, you know, again, the sort of budget, the sort of creativity, because ultimately, you know, 3-4 minute, 5 minute trailer is capturing the mood, right? Like, it's not so much about telling a coherent story or trying to create, you know, 3-4 hours worth of coherent entertainment out of that universe. It's just setting a tone and creating a, you know, a sense of place and purpose and all of that stuff. So when you look at something like a 3 minute long Dawn of War trailer, they're just trying to illustrate to you that this place is pretty crazy and people are always fighting. And when you think that you've got the biggest, baddest thing that murders everything, don't be, assuming that there isn't something bigger or badder around the corner. It's that kind of almost the I know a woman who ate a fly type story that always just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it ends up with that sea of like.
Yeah, but you've got to think like how old are these video trailers as well? Like, do you remember the Mark of Chaos trailer where you've got the warrior priest
so good
by a spearman walking through the woods to then get ambushed by chaos warriors, and they get saved by that wood elf, and then the bloodthirster turned up.
Yeah.
Like that was amazing, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
But to counter all of that, right? You're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds invested in 3 to 4 minutes of CG to be offset against a product that is projected to make tens, if not hundreds of millions, right? Whereas in the realm of more this sort of production, you have to be more efficient with it. It's just not.
Yeah,
it's apples and oranges, Joe.
I know, but the terms of like they did all that hard work back then. The technology from then must be available to a company like GW now.
Yeah, but they have to spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
And it's not just a case of spending a lot of money on the technology, it's the talent. That's the thing that costs. Because, it's expensive, man. It's very expensive. But look, I think, not to bash on it, I think there's some really interesting scenes in this trailer. I'm especially interested in the scene where the Gene Stealers pour out from the crevice on what looks like the hot Space Hulk that the guy's on. I think that looks really ominous and quite exciting.
I'm going to watch it, and if I got to buy it, I will probably buy it, and I'll probably watch it like 10 times, because I'll lap it up because it's Space Marines, and I'm sure it'll be great. I'm just hoping that the quality's up to a little bit. That's all. Yeah. I think I originally just got that little tinge of disappointment because it's one of those like, oh God, like, is this what they're producing? Like, could we see another Space Marine movie all over again? Or Ultramarines, whatever it was called.
Yeah, the Ultramarines movie was pretty underwhelming, it has to be said.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my thought on it.
Fair enough, buddy, fair enough. How about you, Phil? You excited for this one? You sort of seemed like you were, but, closing thoughts?
I'm sure I'll give it a watch when it does come out. I'm keen to see more. I don't know if, like I said, the darkness of the art style will probably try and hide some flaws, and because I presume it's a series, right? It's going to be several short episodes, or is it going to be like one big movie length type thing?
That would be my assumption, but it could be one movie type thing, but I imagine they're looking more towards episodic content at this stage.
I just guess it's like how good the story is going to be, because the visuals need to be impressive. Ultimately, it's got to be engaging enough story-wise to actually want to watch it in the first place.
Yeah. There is often a temptation with Warhammer 40,000 to A, use Space Marines, and B, just show montages of them fighting and fighting and fighting. And through reading and listening to lots of Black Library novels over the years, that's probably the least interesting thing about Space Marines is when they're fighting. Because by all accounts, they just mostly win. Whereas the dialogue between characters and stuff always seems like the most compelling moments to me. So hopefully they expand on that. But there you go. So, in conclusion, that has been us looking at the various announces, releases, and things from the LVO. Phil is most likely excited about the prospect of Krieg. Joe doesn't like Zotes very much. And I'm quite enjoying the look of these Mechanicus bits and pieces. So, with that said, I suppose we may as well move on to whatever it is that comes next. Transitional noise. Woo! Hello everyone, in this part of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, I don't entirely know why I'm deciding to reassert what the name of the podcast is, but that's how I've decided to do it, and we're going to run with it. In this part of the podcast, the Look Out Sir 40k podcast, we're going to be talking about Beachhead Brawl. Yay! I'm sure you're pretty sick of us plugging away at it, but Beachhead Brawl is taking place on the weekend of Saturday the 8th of February and also Sunday the 9th of February 2020, the year of our Lord. Joining me in this segment is Glorious Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you.
Wonderful. And then, of course, the illustrious Joe.
Howdy doody.
Not to be confused with Joe Malin, of course.
Of course. Of course.
Some people were actually asking Joe, and I probably will have, meant to have put this in the intro, but I've got to say it now. People were actually quite interested in the idea of a I'm Not Joe Malin t-shirt.
Really? I think we should make it a thing, and just every we should have an army. Like the V for Vendetta masks. Everyone just has an I'm Not Joe Malin t-shirt.
There you go. Maybe, just maybe, Joe, you could premiere a I'm Not Joe Malin t-shirt, or rather maybe I'm Not That Joe, at the Beachhead Brawl / Bournemouth Grand Tournament. Might that be an idea?
That could be something that we have to do, actually.
There is on the cards. I need to get on the phone to Lee. I reckon he could smash one of those out in time for, it's 3 weeks away, near enough from where we are right now. But obviously, by the majesty of podcast magic, this having been hopefully released on Saturday the 1st of February, it is still a week away. So, plenty of time, Joe, for us to create a t-shirt commemorating a thing you said on the internet.
Yeah, once. And only people that listen to this podcast and that one specific episode will understand and know. But we will know that they are fans because of their knowing nod.
Exactly.
Street.
That shared glance between, people. It'll be a wonderful thing. Anyway, we're going off topic massively. The Beachhead event is hopefully going to be a really interesting event. It takes place at the Bournemouth International Centre, I think it's called. It's the BIC, is what they call it within the confines of Bournemouth, I'm told reliably. And it is essentially a really large hobby event. Well, not really large, but a pretty large hobby event that for the first time ever is attempting to break into the world of competitive 40k and is attempting to host one of the larger ITC-orientated tournament events. For those of you who want to know more about the event, I suggest you go back and check out the episode where we had Adam on talking about it in more detail. But what we're going to be talking about today, I presume, is our aspirations and or intentions for the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, the armies we're taking, what we're expecting to see, and also Phil's opinions on all of this, given that he is not the sort of man who cares all that much about competitive 40k anymore. Would that be a fair assertion, Phil?
Oh, yeah, quite likely. I mean, I was going to say you should start off with my list, and then I would just say, but I'm not going.
Well, there you go. Oh, if only we had actually talked about this before we started recording, that would have actually been a moment of comedy genius.
No.
Should we just pretend that didn't happen and I can do it now?
It's too late. The moment's passed.
The moment's passed. Put the toys back in the box. We're all going home. But there you go. But Phil has joined us because, ultimately it wouldn't be a Look Out Sir 40k podcast without Phil here. And obviously we like to have Phil here because he can contribute those kind of learned questions to the thing. Kind of go, but Dan, and also Joe, that's not Krieg. Tell me more. That's what I'm expecting from you today, Phil.
Does it wear a gas mask?
Are there shovels involved?
There's never enough shovels for you, is there, Phil? There's a distinct lack of shovels going on in all these armies.
I mean, you say that. I have to say, I am the number one hater of Krieg shovel memes. I cannot abide them, and I see them constantly.
Are you thinking of adding that to the terms of the Krieg Facebook group?
You say that, it's already in there.
Is it?
Basically, it's been in there a while. It's like no memes, including... Or we try to put a cap on memes, and it says, yes, including shovel memes. I mean, because the amount you get is like, you get the same one repeated 10 times a day, and it's like, it wasn't funny the first time, let alone for the upteenth millionth time. because they go around in circles constantly.
You're not one to feel joy or allow others to do it, are you?
I mean, if you want to do it, there's plenty of other groups where you can post those shovel memes. Even though it would seem appropriate for the Krieg group, I'd much rather see some beautifully painted models than the heavy breathing intensifies meme, or or any memes to do with shovels, or ads for real world pseudo military shovels that can chop a melon in half. So we don't need that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Having not been in any way, previously aware of these memes, though, I'm incredibly intrigued by the sorts of comedy that can be felt or experienced by expressing heavy breathing increases and or the chopping of melons. This is a whole eye-opening experience for me.
Next time I see them, I will post them to you so you can have a look.
Please, that'd be fantastic.
There's like a whole Krieg dark web of like fan fiction and shovels.
Is that what it is? When you buy Krieg models from Games Workshop, much like on the dark web, I hear, I mean, obviously I don't have any actual real-life experience of the dark web, but I hear people get parcels that are hidden, hidden within are the things that they got off of the dark web. So they'll get like some Wellington boots and, a ton of cocaine. I'm not familiar with the measurements. But
this will be like, you'll get an old-fashioned like World War One shovel where the handle's wooden, but it's hollow and it's just full of Krieg.
Yeah, do you know what? That's actually quite a good idea as a sort of some form of like display cabinet for your model.
It's all Krieg loot boxes. You don't know what you're going to get in the handle of your shovel.
I mean, if it's related to the Krieg, surely it would be disappointment and or a life of servitude.
Yeah, it's a out of date rule set and a bunch of models that are no longer available because they don't sell them anymore.
Surely that would be good though, receiving. Every single model you receive is Krieg standing to attention. The most unusable models ever.
Yes. I mean, they're not too bad. They're the lazy ones that hang out at the back on your own objective, so it's kind of thematic.
Does that mean that you have to you're like, oh, my guys have moved off the objective now, so I have to take these ones off and replace them for ones
exactly. As soon as you swap the models over,
and then you're like, well, it's a shooting phase now, so all these ones that are running I have to now take off and replace with the ones that are now aiming.
Exactly. That's how you do it. When they're charging, they're doing the running one. The heavy weapon teams, the ones that are running, are always -1 because they've moved, even if they haven't moved. The models look like they're moving. That's how it works.
Okay.
That is the joy of it. So yeah, an unworkable rule set and a series of tanks that could be viable, if not for the fact that they were 300 points for no reason at all.
Those ones, yeah, no, that's true.
Oh, this tank could be useful.
I mean, this is a bit of a divergent, but I do think the out of all the Macarius tanks, probably the Vulcan one's probably got the most legs, and then out of the Malcadors, the Defender with its, I want to say 5 heavy bolters, but I think it can have up to 8, is pretty solid.
The thing I like about the Malcador is it was released in a rule set where firing arcs were a thing.
Yeah.
They've got a heavy bolter pointing in every direction imaginable, even up. It's like this thing's got so many guns, but you can only fire 1 heavy bolter in each direction. So you have to run at least 12 of them to be able to do a viable amount of shots.
It's that classic another Krieg meme where you've got to send it up the board so you get surrounded, because Krieg is most happy when they are surrounded. So that's what you'd have to do.
It's really weird, actually, going back to thinking about the world before everything just shot, assumingly from, all over the place. Because it took me a while at the start of 8th edition to start to retrain my mind to going, why is there a gun pointing backwards, and why is that a good thing? And then, obviously, now we just all take for granted that the assertion is that these, tanks and vehicles are just doing donuts, firing in all directions. But, obviously, back in the day, it was a bit more thematic, I suppose.
Yeah. I always when I teach people, and they're like, but that doesn't make any sense that it can shoot out of its tank track because it's hiding behind that wall. And so, well, actually, if it's driven from point A to point B, it might have fired its gun at any point whilst travelling along. All you're now seeing is its final resting place.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that is the thing, isn't it, right? That is the suspension of disbelief that it's playing with small toy soldiers. It is more than just a literal interpretation of where the model resides. It is more about the kind of what it represents in a, air quotes, real life setting. But we really, really have gone off on a tangent. But I'm glad we did because, I mean, obviously we gave Phil a chance to kind of, at least voice some opinions on Krieg-related things before we got into tournament chatter. So the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, it's run by our buddy Adam. You may have seen him on our big fat 40k quiz of the year doing the scorekeeping. You may have heard him on the show in the past. But this is Adam's first venture into running a large-scale tournament. Sorry, I'm starting to sound a bit like Boris Johnson with weird unnecessary pauses. I've just drank a Monster Energy drink and I'm a little bit burpy. But the point is, this is Adam's first attempt at doing something of this scale. And obviously, as good buddies of old Adam, we're keen to try and support him and do one last little push. So if any of you are in any way interested, I imagine there will still be tickets available and there will be a link below. And if you would like to come play in a 40k tournament and maybe bump into myself and Joe and have a chat about things, we'll be there and it'll be a delight to see you. But anyway, look, plugs aside.
On a side note, it's good for UK ITC points gathering because it's 6 games. Because most tournaments and most GTs in the UK only go to 5. And they obviously, depending if there's lots of people there, they generate an okay amount of points. But once you get up to 6, it becomes a major. So it generates more points than usual. So if you're looking to kind of do well and get points to help you get up the rankings, then going to a 6-round event is quite useful. And that's part of the reason why he's doing it as well.
Kickstart your ITC season if that sort of thing means something to you. And it's fair to say, I've heard a lot of people, there's a lot of people talking about 2020 and then obviously the early part of 2021 as something of an aspirational season for a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people who've been, at least that I know of, that have been toying around, playing in tournaments and taking it relatively casually, going to the odd one day, not necessarily travelling up and down the UK. But I've heard a lot of people talking about this being their big year, if you will. I mean, Joe, would you say that you're embracing or embarking upon a big year for ITC in 2020?
Oh, definitely. I am. Like you mentioned, I've done lots of little one-dayer events. I've never done a non-GW kind of GT event. And this year, I kind of want to make a big push of it. Kind of experience it because I listen to all the other podcasts. I watch all the other YouTubers, and they talk about it, and they make it sound like such gosh darn fun. It's just like.
I mean, your ongoing relationship with the infamous Stephen Box must also have been something of a incentive for you, right? Yeah. I mean, having him prodding you every day, going, "Come on, Joe, come on."
Yeah, I speak to Steve nearly every day, and he comes to my place of work to play Warhammer every Tuesday and smashes me up. And I've now entered into some kind of weird cosmic situation where I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym with him, and he's like, "Oh, we'll sit down." He's like, "I got you a ticket, Joe." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Where for?" And he's like, "This event at this weekend. Make sure you're free." And I'm like, "Oh my God, another one." It's only just started, and my calendar's starting to fill up already. And it's every time he adds one, it's just a little bit of extra dread enters my soul.
I hope you've explained this to him at various points, because if he's hearing this for the first time now, maybe that will take him by surprise. He's made himself so available to you and trying to push you and make you a better gamer, and here's you saying you don't even want it.
Everyone sees him as this nice, lovely, cheery chap, and everyone gets on with it. But in behind closed doors, he's like one of those. I described him as one of those evil Russian ballet teachers that you see in the films. He's like, better now, and he'll like whip you. Or like at the gym, he's like, you're using the wrong muscle group, and he'll prod you right in the shoulder until you start crying because it hurts. He goes, can you use that muscle now? No, good. Now stop using it. And it's just like, no, don't hit me. My life now.
Well, there's a fantastic window into that relationship. Sorry, Phil, you were saying.
It sounds like Joe's loving it though.
Oh yeah, I'm losing weight, and he has gained the title of number 3 as the best looking man in the ITC. He's at all of those heady heights. It blew my mind. They have an award for this as well, by the way.
Aren't you aspiring to conquer that and become the most handsome man in 40k? Isn't that what you want to be?
That's what I want to be. So I basically need to, like, within a year, become Brad Pitt, and I'll be.
What you need, Joe, I reckon, you need one of those haircuts where it's sort of shaved on one side and then long on the other with like a big bushy beard and some abs. Then you'd be like, like a Jason Momoa type, I reckon.
Or like a Viking Skrillex.
Yeah, like a Viking Skrillex. That's what you got to go for, man. Embrace your Viking heritage and let that rock. Anyway, there you go. Talking about him being beautiful. Also, I mean, to be fair to Steve, he's also, big name in the podcast game already. I understand from a post he put out the other day, he's soaring to newfound heights. So, maybe if you want to listen to someone a little bit more comprehensive when it comes to competitive play, try listening to that. But, don't venture too far. We still love and need you. You validate every moment.
Go explore. Like you were a teenager. Go out, do new things. Always come back home to us, where it's safe.
Exactly. Into the warm embrace of Joe's hairy bosom.
Yep.
I mean, Phil, is this going to be a big year for you in the ITC, mate?
Well, I want to be really sarcastic and be like, yeah, it'll be super great. But no, I mean, I'll occasionally play the odd ITC game. If I get into No Retreat again, that'll be an ITC game technically. So
nice.
They do the ETC format though, don't they?
Yeah, which is got ITC points, isn't it?
Oh yes, because ITC is more about scorekeeping rather than a particular format. But I think it weirdly tends to get used as a byword for a particular kind of games format that is used in those top tournaments.
You're 100% right, format. Phil. 100% right. I early on in this season that is coming to an end, I was doing really well with Elder, and I was playing in mostly one-dayers, and none of those one-dayers were using the ITC format rules. So I was like, I think at one point I was like maybe top 10 Elder player at the very, very start of this season, and I hadn't even played one game of ITC. I remember the first time someone introduced me to the idea of an ITC tournament. I hadn't even read the tournament pack, and he goes, right, you got to choose some secondaries. And I'm like, what do you mean? Just secondaries are always the same. It's like, no, there's this thing, it's called Big Game Hunter. That'll probably be good. I'm like, okay, fine. And then at the end of it, I was like, well, the guy had like 6 tanks, so I killed 6 tanks, so I got 6 Big Game Hunter. And the tournament organizer was like, no, Dan, that's not how it works. I was like, well, no one explains this to me. What is this madness? Like, it's just, can't I just play Eternal? What is going on here? But obviously, since then, I've somewhat understood how it's supposed to work. So, I've done my research now. I'm a little bit more well-versed in it. But I'm not sure whether it's going to be a big year for me or not when it comes to the ITC. I'm obviously going to go to the Bournemouth Grand Tournament. I've been eyeing up the idea of going to at least one tournament a month. That's really where I'm sort of at. But then March is a bit busy because we've got the Warhammer World 40k team tournament in early April. So March becomes a little bit of a write-off. So unless something falls into the earlier part of March, I probably won't be doing much in March. But we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, I like the idea of, being part of the conversation. I mean, after having played Blood Angels at the Grand Tournament Finals, have really resigned myself to my internal truth, which is that I am a Craftworld Eldari player through and through, and I'm just hurting myself by not doing that. You know, when you got people like I can't remember the name of any of these really good ITC players that flip-flop between armies. Joe, do you remember the name of any good ITC players who do different armies constantly?
Well, Nick Nedavadi, he's like he jumps around a bit, and you've got
Nick Nedavadi will do. That guy, I'm not as good as him, and I probably never will be because I don't have the time to commit to, to learning all those little nuances. So I'm just going to stick to one army. I'm just going to be an army specialist and hope that I can continue to do well with Craftworld AELDARI.
That's the good thing about the ITC. You can either opt to go for the big win to like win the ITC kind of thing, and just on pure points, or you can put yourself down a little niche, little way and be like, well, I'm not going to win it, but I might be able to get best in faction because they track all that as well. So you could be like, oh, I'm going to try and be best in faction on Blood Angels, or I might be best in faction for Salamanders. You can flip-flop between all the different Space Marines and then try and get best in faction on Adeptus Astartes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would be very content with being known as being a solid gatekeeper. That would be fine with me. A solid gatekeeper or a journeyman, or a journeyman, depending on how it's pronounced. Mostly American people say that stuff in relation to sports and so on and so forth. But I'll be happy with that. I don't mind being a name associated with being a bit of a nuisance, but not the best. It's like, watch out for him, because he'll do you, but if you're halfway decent, you shouldn't have a problem. I'm fine with that reality. That would do fine for me. So I'm aiming for relative, like a B+ player is all good with me. Anyway, that all said, ITC nonsense aside, this is an ITC tournament. It's 6 rounds, and myself and Joe are playing in it. We're still trying to convince Phil to come along, but he's probably not going to, despite our best efforts. I mean, Phil, you going to come down for at least one day and hang out?
Is it one? I thought it was just a 1 day, though.
No, it's 2 days, mate. So it's 4 games on the Saturday, 2 games on the Sunday.
Okay. Well, yeah, because as I said before, Saturday night I've got plans, but Sunday I might be free, so therefore I could come down.
Come down, man. I hear it's got lots of other cool stuff going on, like show stuff to do with like historical wargaming and all that fun stuff. You might be able to find some stuff for that project you're working on with the Rat King.
Well, I've got all of those bits because the Chaos Spawn model that I needed has turned up from Warhammer Conquest.
Oh yeah.
And then I've got the Corpse Cart model already, so I've got and I'm just going to mash them together.
Can't wait to see it, man.
I'm sure I'll come up with something.
Well, it's going to be beautiful. But anyway, right, so Phil's likely isn't coming. Richie might be coming as well. We'll ask him later on. He should hopefully be appearing in this podcast later because the intent is that we're going to do a quiz at some point in this. But right now it's Wednesday the 22nd and we've still got a week and a half to go. So if I say these things and I'm incorrect, I apologise. But anyway, so myself and Joe are going and we are kind of going back to our roots, I suppose, in some regards. Joe having once been the #1 Drakari player in the ITC, isn't that right, Joe?
Yeah.
It's going back to his Drakari roots. So again, everyone, that was a reference to the. We're going to drop all this Joe Malin stuff now. It's this is all just for George's benefit, but we'll leave it alone now. But yeah, so
I blame George entirely for me even taking the Dark Eldar now as well. I messaged him and I was like, I've just gone and bought 4 boxes of Reaver jet bikes. You did this. I hope you know this is a fact.
I hope he really enjoys the fact that we just keep shouting him out now. This is what happens, you see. I mean, if any of you out there like our show and come up and talk to us about it, because it happens so rarely, you become like a little celebrity in our world. Me and Joe chat most mornings. All we talk about is George now. Oh, I love that George. What a lovely boy. Oh, I wish we could be better friends. Maybe if we move closer to him, we could hang out more. Oh, good lad.
Yeah. Well, what kind of cake does George like? If I take him, he'll eat it. If I take it to an event.
Yeah. Do you think it'd be weird if I just turned up on his doorstep tomorrow and just was like, "Hey, man, want to hang out? Hey." God, that'd be so strange, wouldn't it? We should definitely do that, Joe. Anyway, so Joe, you're taking Drakari. Do you want to tell us about your Drakari list, the thoughts and theories behind it?
Having run with Marines and decided that I don't actually enjoy playing with Marines because they're an incredibly boring and dull army to run, and I qualified with my Drakari Gwyn's list, and I thought, well, I'm probably not going to win the ITC at all because I can't go to the LVO and stuff like that because I'm poor. But I can go to a few major events and get some decent points. So my plan this year is just to do as well as I can with pure Drakari. That's my goal. Do as well as I can. Maybe not win it, but maybe like top 5, top 10 I'll be happy with.
Top 5, top 10 is a very, very reasonable aspiration in a faction such as Drakari.
Yeah. So my list, 3 detachments. It's double battalion and an air wing. So it's all Blackheart. All the detachments Blackheart, just to make it simple.
Nice.
Like Blackheart is the most reliable of all the factions.
Is that essentially because everything in your army is painted the same and you can't be asked to go back and define what is what?
That does have a distinct defining factor to this as well. Okay. I'm going to be honest. So, but obviously, because the good thing about Drakari is that later on, I've got some list ideas because of George that I've add some a witch cult to it. It doesn't matter that they're the same colour because the witch cult are inherently different anyway.
It is true. For the benefit of those listening, though, what is a Blackheart detachment? What's that do?
So, being Blackheart, it just means that all units in your army count as being one turn higher on your power from pain. So first turn you get the 6-up feel no pain and reroll charges, and then to turn 2 you get those 2 plus 1 to hit. So you stack up really really quickly.
Also, your vehicles get 6-up feel no pain as well, don't they?
Yeah, units that don't get power from pain get the first level of power from pain, which is a 6-up, which is really, really good. And it also gives you access to Vect, which is super useful. And Vect is basically 4 CP. You roll a dice when your opponent does a stratagem. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 5, you cancel that stratagem they've played and they get the points refunded. On a 6, you cancel it and they lose the points that they spent on that stratagem, which is quite nice. It's quite good.
Just stop it! Stop it!
Yeah. Which is really, really good. So, for instance, like if you come up against an Eldar player that wants to do a double move and then charge kind of thing when they advance, you can, and that's a stratagem, isn't it? The advance.
Yeah, not the double move, but the advance and charge is a Sam Hand stratagem, yes.
Yeah, so you go, no, I'm not having that today, thank you very much. Or the Space Marine, I'm going to do mortal wounds to you on 6s because I'm Imperial Fist stratagem. You're like, no, indeed. Not today.
Or an Imperial Knight trying to rotate Iron Shields, the pesky blighter.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, the Air Wing is 3 Razor Wing jet fighters.
Oh my god.
Yeah, simple, plain. They've just got disintegrator cannons and splitter cannons. I've looked at the bombers and I'm not convinced.
My thing with the bombers is I think it takes a very disciplined player not to just fall victim to the notion of hurling them at the enemy and letting off that massive amount of mortal wounds that they can pump out, because when they fly over something they can do mortal wounds on a 4+, is it?
Yeah.
And it's 1 per model in the unit up to 10, right?
Yes. But the problem, I kind of feel like when you're not using that, all you've got is 2 guns, like 2 anti-tank guns. But 2 anti-tank guns that can barely kill a tank. So it's inefficient at what it does, kind of. It's kind of like it's a dual-purpose plane, which is good at neither things that it's dual-purpose to do.
Sounds like a Krieg unit.
It does. So I'm not convinced. Whereas the Razor Wing, I've found, is good at killing Space Marines. It's good at killing Eldar bikes. It's good at killing just elite units in general, to be honest. But it has enough shots that it can put a dent in a horde. And as I'm running 3 of them, they can move, block stuff. If you put the whole unit into all 3 units into like a 30-man blob of orcs, it would put a rather sizable dent in them. So yeah, those are always useful. And then my first battalion is an Archon, and he's got the Labyrinth, Fine Cunning, and Writ of the Living Muse, Relic, and Warlord trait.
Is that the reroll ones to hit and reroll ones to wound thing?
Yep. So Writ of the Living Muse gives you the reroll ones to wound. Yes. So he's the babysitter character, and the Labyrinth, Fine Cunning, basically whenever you spend stratagems, you roll dice equal to the amount of points that you spend. On a 6, you get 1 back.
Reasonable.
Cool. The other HQ is Drazar, because that boy's an absolute beast. And I did a game. I played a game with him the other day. And in that game, he killed an Armiger and a Gallant not in the same combat, but in 2 different rounds of combat.
I was going to say that's a heck of a combat phase that you got out of him there.
He's an absolute monster. And he's an auto include for 100 points as well. He's got 6 wounds, 4 attacks. He attacks twice in combat. His swords are -3, 2 damage, but on the roll of a 6 to wound, it becomes damage 4.
Is he only 100 points now? I wasn't aware of that.
He's had a massive points decrease.
Wow. Well, he really is an auto include at 100 points.
Yeah. And Dark Eldar are a bit starved of HQ choices, because they've only got 1 HQ choice for each different what they're called, coven or whatever. So
obsession or whatever it is.
Yeah, so you've got so the Cabalite detachments, they only have Archons, Witches only have Succubus, and Homunculus covens, they only get Homunculus, basically. And there is a special character Witch, which is Lilith, but she's only available to one of the cults, the Witch cults. And then you've got Ewan Rakoff, which is available to only Prophets of the Flesh. And then you're left with Drazar, who anyone can take. So he's kind of like your only real option for a backup if you're running something like a brigade, because otherwise you're just left running loads and loads of Archons.
You could look at the Inari characters, though, right? You've got, obviously... Because, what's her face? The cat lady. What's she called? Yvraine?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yvraine's a good option, because she gives you some psychic in Drakari, and she's not that expensive anymore.
Yeah, she is a character I've looked at. I need to pick up the Triumphant, because she gives you a slight bit of psychic defense, and smites are always useful.
Very useful, and I mean, she's got access to a reasonable selection of psychic powers. Although the issue is with the Inari psychic powers they're predominantly, if I remember correctly, mostly like buff related things. But she does have smite, and then she does also have gaze of the, or is it Ancestor's Grace? It's either Ancestor's Grace or gaze of the Yin Yan, which gives her an extra smite, which is if you cast it, you roll a d6 on a 1, you do 1 mortal wound. On I think a 2 to a 5, you do d3 mortal wounds, and on a 6 you do d6 mortal wounds, which is pretty reasonable as an extra smite, I suppose.
So she's good. She's a good one to have in the back pocket then.
The Vizark as well, though, man. I mean, the Vizark's about 70 points, and he's pretty similar in almost every way to Drazar, but not quite as good as Drazar, obviously. But then 30 points less. So
I have kind of got a plan for them, go in the future. But the problem is if I put a Unari detachment in my army, which I kind of want to do, you lose points for going down the single route.
Yeah, but you can just take one as a character, and it doesn't remove any of your detachment benefits. And it's just because for the Drakari especially, I think the Incarn's a massive investment, and I don't think it's really worth it for most of the Drakari stuff, although there are definitely builds that will benefit from an Incarn. But the Vizark and Yvraine Yvraine especially in Drakari has a place because of the psychic element, which you sorely lack without her or any other Craft World or Harlequin allies.
Oh god, yeah.
But anyway, there you go. That's an idea.
So Drazar and Archon at the HQs.
Yeah.
Then I've got 3 squads of Cabalite Warriors, or 5, with a blaster in each. And then I've got a 10-man unit of Incubi.
I'm sorry, what now? A 10-man unit of Incubi?
Yeah.
In a raider?
No.
Okay. You've not gone entirely mad.
No, I was... Because the thing is, I've got a lot of painting to do. I've got a lot of stuff to add. I kind of wanted to stick to the Cabalite kind of like covers. So I was just going to stick with them. I've got some points to fill. I've got these Incubi that I bought. I'm going to use them. Kind of like people who use the Witch Bomb kind of thing. So the Incubi can either go in a webway, and then I could deep strike them in turn 2, turn 3. They've got a re-rollable charge. So they get into the back line to harass stuff. You're playing like a Space Marine player with lots of artillery. You can go rapid artillery and slowly kill it off over time. Or in places like the Orc, the Tyrannid, the Blood Angels, and even the Eldar matchups where they're using Shining Spears and stuff, I want to kind of keep them in my backlines as a counter push unit. Someone brings in Sanguinary Guard or chucks in a unit of Shining Spears. You put these guys out of chargeable range, and then once you've been hit and you've taken that original punch, you can then send this 10-man squad in to mop them up quite happily. And if Drazar's nearby, he'll obviously help, but he also gives them +1 to wound. So against Blood Angels, they're wounding on freeze. It's quite nice. I'm quite happy.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
Yes, and they do 1 damage each, but like Drazar on a roll of a 6, they do 2 damage, and a 10-man squad's putting out 31 attacks.
Yikes.
Yeah. Well, the squad of 10's putting out 31 attacks, so they'll get the job done.
I mean, certainly in the scenarios you've laid out, for sure. The problem always was the Incubi, but I suppose obviously you've got the webway portal option, like you say, to put them in reserves and deploy them within 9, which is... it's an option, right? I mean, like you say, I think they could be a good bunker buster unit in the late game. So if you've got people in the backboard trying to apply pressure, I mean, obviously, we've seen from some of the LVO lists that have done the rounds, I mean, there's that infamous one that's just filled with artillery. Something like that could be a headache to them in turn.
If you come up against an opponent that's got no ignore, if you come up against a Space Marine player that has no ignores cover kind of thing, you can if you wanted to, because they've got a free up save. Just plonk them in on a piece of scenery at the back line, and do like strike. It's like we hunt from the shadows, we strike from the shadows, which gives them +2 to their cover save. So they've got a 1-up save in cover and a 6-up feel no pain. In which case they're going to be really, really difficult to dig out for a lot of people. Potentially.
I mean, there's a reason why people don't take Incubi. But then the thing is that it might be a surprise to some people. So I think I'm not in any way discouraging it as a choice. It's just an interesting choice. I mean, Phil, what do you think of the Incubi? Get in here, Phil. What do you reckon of the old Incubi, mate? Are you interested in seeing what they can do? Have you an opinion?
I mean, I'm not entirely au fait with them.
Well, essentially, they're a unit of combat elites that have free up armor saves, power weapons, so AP -2 or -3, Joe?
Minus. Hang on. I want to say -3.
I also think it's -3.
I have been. No, you're wrong. Yeah. So they're +1 strength, which makes them strength 4.
Yep.
-3, 1 damage. On a roll of a 6 to wound, they become damage 2.
But their entire shtick is...
Oh no, it says add 2 to the damage characteristic, so they actually become damage 3.
Wow. But their entire shtick is that they're an elite combat unit. What do you think about elite combat units currently in 40k, Phil?
Well, I know you're probably going to say combat's dead and is a bit rubbish, but I think that's probably sort of on the turn a little bit. Like you've
had a lot of not a lot of success, but you've had a lot of fun running the Crusaders. I mean, do you think there's something to be said for this stuff at the minute?
Well, I think the problem with the Crusaders is even with a 3-up invuln save, they can still easily die to just bolter fire because they're toughness 3. So, elite toughness 3 stuff, maybe not so.
Which is exactly what this is.
Yeah, but they've got feel no pains, right? So they're at least a bit more durable. Also, I think it's with them, like you've got a delivery mechanism for them, I assume, or they at the very least they've got kind of quick movement.
They are very quick, it's fair to say.
Dash around, whereas Crusaders are sort of at a snail's pace, just sort of plodding their way up the board. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, these are the new like plastic models, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen anyone run them, but maybe that's just because they're, I would say new, but I imagine they're not new because
no, they've been around.
The old model.
They've been around since the early Dark Elder days. Although
why is Joe rating them then? What's his hot take on why they're a must-have?
Well, I think that they're a good backline harasser kind of unit because they can web way in. With that re-roll charge, gives them a higher chance of getting in. You can either re-roll both of them, or if you roll a 6, you can just re-roll the 1, which inevitably is.
Do you have to CP re-roll that, or is that actually in their ability?
Have to CP roll that. They do have access to a stratagem, which basically allows you to be 1 turn higher than what it is. So if you bring them in turn 2, you can bump them up so when they get into combat, they're hitting on 2s with those power swords, which is pretty tasty. And a lot of the Drukhari players I've been looking around rely quite heavily on the witch bomb. They just drop in 20 witches and kind of charge with them. But the witches are a lot easier to kill because they only have a 6-up save. And they're not killing in combat because they don't really come with power weapons. They're just strength 3 knives.
Though they do obviously have the advantage of a 4-up invuln in combat, which does give them a lot of survivability. Yeah,
when they get into combat, they do a lot of damage. But 10 incubi is only 140 points.
Oh, is that all they are?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough. Because I was going to say, I mean, even if you took like 6 or something. But yeah.
They used to be like 20 points a model. They were like crazy expensive to put down. But now at 14 points a model, like the same price as a Space Marine.
So how many attacks are they putting out?
So they've got 3 attacks each. 3 attacks each. 4 on the Clavex, which is the leader. Hitting on 3s at strength 4, -1. They've got a stratagem called Onslaught, where on the roll of a 6, they get an additional hit. So you get a potential 35, 36 hits, basically.
I mean, that's the thing, man. I don't mean to sort of dampen your enthusiasm for them. I wasn't entirely aware of the fact that they're only 140 points, which definitely changes up things pretty massively. Because that's cheap, right? I mean, obviously, you compare it to the Craft World's most notable comparison, which is the Striking Scorpions. Striking Scorpions do not have the -3, and they don't do nearly as much damage. But they do get the Deep Strike ability, the ability to deploy within 9 after coming out of reserves. free of charge, as it were. There's no CPs required for that, and they do mortal wounds on a 6+, assuming they're within 1 inch, and that's only to infantry. That's not to everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
With these, like, if you've got these boys and Drazar together, they'll drop a knight easy, because they're wounding a knight on 5s then, because they get plus wound. And if you've got onslaught on, they'll just carve that thing up in a turn.
That is an optimistic statement right there, but I don't not believe you is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I don't doubt you.
Yeah, because they can. I think on paper, I've yet to like run them and really kind of fine tune playing with them. But I think they've got that potential to either deep strike in or start on the table, charge into a unit of something like Terminators, Primaris Marines, Gene Stealers, all their other really heavy hitting combat stuff.
Yeah.
And then beat them in a one-er kind of thing. Just kind of get rid of them.
Decent, man.
Yeah.
So what else have you got in this list of yours? We've spent an awful long time talking about these incubi. Incubi, depending on pronunciation. What comes next?
3 Ravagers with disintegrated cannons. The old.
Oh
standard.
my god! I never saw that coming.
Yeah, and they're super good. For anyone who doesn't know what a Ravager does, it's just a gun platform. It's just a boat that has 3 guns on it. Each one fires 3 strength 5 shots, -3, 2 damage.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's 36 inches. So they're just really angry heavy bolters, basically. But when you combine that with the Warlord, who gives you reroll 1s to hit and wound, they actually become a bit more viable. Because they'll delete like a unit of Eldar bikes, unit of intercessors, which are obviously really popular at the moment. Like 2 of these things will get rid of a unit of Centurions quite comfortably. So yeah, I've always had a lot of love for them because they've always done a lot of heavy lifting in my list. And every single Dark Eldar player under them because they're just so good.
They're so darn efficient.
Yeah, and then I've got 3 Venoms with a splinter rifle and a splinter cannon for my boys. And then the 2nd battalion is 2 Archons, 3 squads of the Cavalite Warriors with blasters, and 3 more Venoms. And that's my list. It's pretty streamlined. It's pretty simple. Yeah. So the basics is 3 planes, 3 Ravagers, 6 squads of guys, and 6 transports, 3 Archons, Drazar, and a unit of Incubi. Done.
How many points is an Archon these days?
An Archon is coming in at a mighty 61 points.
Okay.
Super G. An Archon is movement 8, weapon skill, ballistic skill 2, strength and toughness 3, 5 wounds with 5 attacks, a 5 up save. But he's got the 2 up invan on the shadow field.
Yeah. The only thing I'm sort of thinking, and hear me out here, because I've had a lot of...
Whilst you think about this, I'm only at 1,980 points. I'm actually 19 points... Well, actually, I'm 20 points shy at the moment of 2,000.
Well, and then this might then add to what I was about to say. So, the Incarn, Joe, is 230 points. I think maybe 240. I can't remember exactly, and I'm not going to check now. But it's about 240 points, give or take. It's definitely not more than that.
The Incarn is 280 points.
All right, fine. I'm entirely wrong, but nonetheless, let me still continue this point because obviously, if you were looking at it and you were thinking to yourself, well, I could take out that unit of Incubi, I can take out one of those Archons. And that nets me 201 points there.
Yeah.
And 20 points, I did see 20 points. Okay, now, given the maths, you've got to find 60 more points from somewhere, which is potentially going to be difficult, because now you're going to be talking about removing a Venom or reducing some other element within the army. But I don't know, man. The Incarn, to me, does what your Incubi are doing with extras. And when you've got sacrificial units like Venoms, and I love the way you play your Venoms, you do all sorts of cheeky shenanigans with, like, putting them in the way of stuff and getting them under people's noses, so to speak.
Yeah.
The added frustration of the way that you play those Venoms and you create threats with them, or not threats, but you create nuisances with them. If you had a threat backing that up in the form of the Incarn, because obviously when someone pops that Venom, you just go, bloop, Incarn, that becomes a really interesting nuance to your list that I don't think a lot of people will take into consideration or be entirely able to comfortably deal with consistently, because the Incarn is such an X factor. Like, for example, when I ran the Incarn in my Craftworld list, I got charged by some Raven Guards super early on in the game, and they made a mess of stuff. And then up pops an Incarn, and it just goes to town on those. This particular Raven Guard player was using aggressors, which was super interesting. But the Incarn just, combined with a couple extra like planes and stuff or whatever that went over there, just absolutely spanked all of this stuff that came in. If you're talking about a counterpunch, the Incarn's a pretty solid counterpunch.
Oh god, yeah.
So I don't know, man. I mean, again, I'm not just trying to constantly get you to put Yanari stuff in your list, but if what you're looking for,
it's an option. But it is an option, as you are saying.
Yeah, well, because here's the thing, right? Again, like Yvrain, the Incarn gives you psychic powers, and unlike Yvrain, the Incarn benefits from most of those psychic powers because the ability to re-roll ones in combat, for example, is really useful for the Incarn. The Incarn gets Feel No Pain 6 up, I think, not 5 up, but, still pretty useful. It's got 6 attacks with a Strength 7 sword or a Strength 6 sword. Strength 6 or Strength 7 sword. But you can re-roll all your wounds with that sword, and it's AP -4, D6 damage. It's so brutal when that thing gets into you. I mean, you want to talk about, your Incubi killing a knight. The Incarn is much more likely to get it done than they are. Although, to be fair, it's quite swingy because you're relying on D6. But even then, man, it's quite interesting. I don't know. It's just something to think about, I guess, at this stage. But
my only downside to the Incarn, and I did think about him, is he's not very good at hordes because he hasn't got a massive amount of attacks. Whereas if someone drops 30 boys in my line, I could be like, well, have a unit of Incubi, and they will just happily mow through you.
That is true. But then you do have a lot of shots in this army list still. I mean, you've got a lot of splinter rifles.
Oh, yeah, I do have a lot of splinter rifles, but the problem is there's no minus to splinter rifles.
Yeah, but these are orcs, right? What are they going to have? A 5-up save?
Yeah, I know, but it's like most Space Marine armies now, a Space Marine army, like the one that you played with, and I know the one that Steve Vox is running at the moment, he's running 30 Sanguinary Guard and a massive unit of 15 Death Company. Plus he's got 15 Scouts, 15 Incursors, and a whole bunch of characters.
Yeah, true.
He's got more infantry on the table than I do. And my army cannot deal with that. A lot of it can't deal with the shooting because you've got 2-up saves across the board. A lot of it's got 2 wounds. So those splinter rifles are going to really, really struggle. Yes, the disintegrators do a lot of damage, but my planes obviously have to move a minimum of 20. And unlike a Craftworld plane, I can't turn twice.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So they will get caught up eventually and cut out of the sky.
I mean, that is obviously a consideration. Obviously, if you're coming up against a list like that. I mean, again, right? I mean, I don't know. Because the thing is like the Sanguinary Guard, the difference with the Sanguinary Guard in the matchup against the Incubi is if they can get to a place where they can draw line of sight to you, they'll just gun you down before they even worry about fighting you. Because those Angelus bolt guns, they just go, we're ignore cover now, blap, 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 and then it's like, you're just done for. It's like, it's that thing.
But that's where the skill of using them comes in, though, and utilising cover and where you put your army and stuff.
True. I mean, as I say, mate, I'm not inherently against it. I'm just sort of throwing out stuff because that's the whole point of this lovely segment of the show is sort of talking about the list, but also talking through the options.
I have weighed up the options, and another list I'm going to be looking at after Beachhead because I'm not going to have time, and I blame Gorgeous George entirely for this. Is that I'm going to try in a witch cult detachment of the Red Grief or Daughters of Grief or Grief. There's a lot of grief going on, basically.
I imagine that. Kimura is not the happiest of places.
And basically, it's a succubus, 15 witches, and a massive, big 10-man unit of Reaver jet bikes.
Not 12, just 10.
Not 12. I might put 12 in, because that's
192 points. Come on now, the value.
Yeah. And those things are mental good. I never really paid witch cult attention. Just because Lilith is my favourite Dark Eldar character by far. Even I love her more than Druzar. She's always done me well in the past. I had her in 5th, 6th, 7th edition. And she was amazing. So I've always gone Cult of Strife. I've taken her and a little piddly squad of witches because I don't really care about them. They're just there to fill out the patrol. So I've never really looked at anyone else. Mm-hmm. But the Red Grief, whatever it is, detachment, they get to advance and charge. So a unit of Reaver jet bikes moves 18 inches.
Yep.
Right?
I understand.
18 inches. And then they auto advance 8.
My goodness. So that would be 26 inches.
26 inches. And then they get to charge with the Grief. So they can...
Crying as they do it. Oh, no!
So sad. So they can just whip across the table and go and touch up people's backline units that can't really deal with them. So you play against your fists and you'd be like, here, Thunderfire cannons, deal with all of these bikes that you can't kill in combat. And of course, because you've got the stratagems, because you're Eldar, you can do the falling back and charging again and all that kind of junk.
I mean, in some respects, that reminds me of the 2009 anime motion picture called Redline, where there was a character within Redline that got enhanced strength from getting all upset and crying, and there was this whole thing where he was where he would beat the chicken burgers out of people, but while doing so, he would be crying his eyes out with grief. So there you go.
Oh, wow. It's kind of like Crying Freeman.
Quite possibly. I mean, Redline is a spectacular piece of work. More people should definitely watch Redline. It's a fantastic film.
People should watch Crying Freeman as well.
There you go. Put that on the list.
Brandon Lee, he's an assassin, right? And every time he kills someone, he sheds a single tear down his eye. Every time he kills them.
As opposed to from anywhere else. I'm glad you clarified where it came from.
Yeah. It's a magical tale.
Yeah.
You have to watch.
It's like I'm there right now. What a treat. Yeah. Phil, you don't know anything about Drakari. Did any of that make sense? Are you enthused and or excited for Joe's efforts?
Oh, I think he's gonna do a pretty solid job.
What's the estimate, Joe? What are you gunning for? How many for how many?
Well, I'll be happy with 4 and 2.
Yeah, your WDL of 402.
Looking at the GT finals and my opponents that I had, obviously if I'd won more early on, then I would have had different opponents. But the people that I played against, I think I would have done better with the Drakari list that I know than what I would have done with the Imperial Fists.
No, that makes sense, man. That makes sense. Yeah. Cool, man. Thank you very much for taking us through your list. I guess I better tell you what I'm doing. So, for those of you who have not been paying attention, I will be taking the Craftworld Eldari, or the Asianari, as they are otherwise known. All of this will be a custom Craftworld, and I'm sure it won't surprise any of you who understand Craftworld Elder that they will be taking expert crafters and masterful shot or masterful shots. Expert crafters being what is commonly referred to as the salamander trait, i.e. you re-roll a single to hit roll and you re-roll a single to wound roll. What I'm finding in playtesting is I'm needing to always have 2 different coloured dice by my side so as I can illustrate to my opponent whether I've re-rolled a hit or re-rolled a wound, because what's occurring there is that people sometimes, as the game goes on, will lose track of whether I've re-rolled a hit or re-rolled a wound, as will I, and that can create a few little funny moments where, you know, because a lot of these vehicles and units I'm using have different types of weapons, so as I nominate the fire, you end up in a really awkward situation where you may forget whether you've re-rolled a hit already or not. So I'm finding now that if I just always make sure that I've got a green dice and a red dice, green dice is for hits, red dice is for wounds, and I've always got those by my side. And then once I re-roll the hit, I re-roll, the green dice, and when I re-roll the wound, I re-roll the red dice, and then I put them away once they've been used, because I find that at least alleviates some of the fun, because people can be understandably well, not difficult. It's just the thing is because it's so many re-rolls and it's just happening, it's very quick and easy for people to lose track of what's going on. So that's just me trying to nuance that a bit. And masterful shots is I ignore cover, which is super good as well. So I have an army that gets 1 free re-roll to hit per squad and 1 free re-roll to wound per squad, as well as also ignoring cover. It's a pretty good combination, wouldn't you say?
It's pretty amazing. They've kind of had the Space Marine treatment in that kind of way. But what made you not want to go with someone like Sam Han, which allows you to shoot your advance and shoot your heavy weapons kind of thing, or the old favourite Alatok for the minuses?
So Sam Han's only real meaningful ability is the ability to reroll charges, which is basically what they do. But the thing that's really useful for them with Shining Spears is the fact that they have that one stratagem that allows you to advance and charge. So if you're advancing and charging with this unit, you get 22 inches of movement and then a charge. But then obviously if you get a double tap, you get up to 44 inches of movement and a charge. If you combo that with Ghost Walk as well, you get +2 to your charge, which is pretty bonkers. But the problem is with that is the way this army list is built. And look, I mean, I can't pretend that I've come up with this on my own. This is as a result of getting back into the AELDARI, Facebook feeds, looking at the sort of stuff people are bringing to LVO, listening to the podcasts and people talking about the sorts of builds that are working for Elder right now. And the overwhelming consensus, and I have to agree with these people, is that these 2 abilities, when done with the sorts of units that I'll talk to you about in a moment, just elevate this army into something quite absurd. Because it's just the amount of firepower. So yeah, losing the whole ability to advance and charge for 1 CP is frustrating. I'll be honest with you as well, because obviously the funny thing about Craftworld Eldari is they have a number of keywords that would enable your battalion to still be battle forged, despite you having multiple different craft worlds. So they have like Battle Host and Craft World and some other names that give them more than one aligning keyword. So you can technically, with Craft World, if you don't want that detachment to benefit from a one specific Craft World attribute, or any Craft World attribute, you can mix up the Craft Worlds in the detachment. So I could have had units that weren't benefiting from this reroll hit, reroll wound, and ignores cover, but utilising certain stratagems. But in the grand scheme of things, it just didn't make sense to sacrifice that ability for the sake of an extra 12 inches of movement on a unit that even without that, you can still double tap them and get 32 inches of movement out of them, which is still very, very healthy in my opinion.
Yeah, still super good.
Yeah, and the reroll hit, reroll wound thing, it's just so efficient. And I guess we'll get into that now. So all this army is a spearhead detachment. Everything's a spearhead detachment. I have 3 spearhead detachments because it's all about the heavy weapons with this. So we start with a Farseer on foot. That Farseer on foot has Doom, Fortune, and Impair Senses. He has the Wing Relic, which is essentially these ethereal wings that are grafted onto him that gives him movement of 12 and the character, not the character keyword, sorry, the fly keyword. And he also has a Singing Spear because at the end of it I had 5 points free. But in playtesting, I'm actually finding the Singing Spears are actually being quite cheeky because if you combine the Singing Spear with getting Jink off, even though it doesn't have a minus modifier to wound, or not to wound, sorry, to armor values, Jink obviously is -1 to your roll, so in a lot of instances people are saving on a 4+, and this thing always wounds on 2s, does D3 damage. It's just a funny little extra just to throw in, just to be able to go ha and chuck a spear at someone.
It's like a good poison because it wounds everything in the game on 2s as well.
Yeah, no, it's pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Then, in this particular detachment, I have 3 units of Dark Reapers. I am taking the Dark Reapers, or rather, I'm taking the Dark Reaper Exarchs with Eldari missile launchers, and I am giving them the ability of Rapid Shot. So every single one of these Dark Reaper Exarchs have Rapid Shot, and if you're not familiar with Rapid Shot is you add 1 extra shot to your weapon. So what that essentially means for the missile launcher is that my crack missile variant, it's not called crack missile when it's an Eldari missile launcher, it's like star missile or something, but most people broadly accept when you say crack missile for it because it basically is the same thing. That variant of it becomes essentially it becomes the equivalent of a what's the name of the Space Marine missile launcher that gets 2 shots?
I've
forgotten already. Tornado? No, not Tornado. Typhoon? No, I've forgotten. Anyway, the point is, it's a 2-shot crack missile for no extra points. It's just an Exarch ability. Yes, you lose the ability to reroll 1s, which is the native Exarch ability, but obviously the 2 shots and combined with the fact that you get the Craftworld ability to reroll 1 hit, reroll 1 wound is pretty incredible. So these 2-shot missile launchers are putting in a lot of work for this army. And not very many people see it coming. It's like, I'm sorry, what? You'd shoot that twice? It's like, yep. And it's...
Does that mean it can do 2 frag missiles as well, so 2 D6 shots?
No, if it does the frag missile variant, it's D6 plus 1.
Sad times.
Yeah. So it's not
as good for sure.
Yeah, not as good. But the thing is even then though, you're banking on the fact that you're always going to see something. There's always going to be something that you're going to want to fire crack missiles at.
Yeah.
And obviously these guys always hit on freeze. They're just amazing because, like, if your opponent has like flyers, these guys are amazing because you can just shoot these missiles at flyers all day, which is crazy good. Like, you know, if people are still running Iron Hand flyers, which I am under the impression they are, this is one of their worst nightmares because you're going to get 2 crack missile shots and then you're going to get 2 heavy Reaper cannon launcher shots at them, which is straight for 8 flat 3 damage. So you could, you know, one of these squads could, in theory, it's not 100% likely, but with a jammy dice roll on the D6 damage, you could theoretically down any aircraft with 1 unit of 3 Dark Reapers. But
yeah,
I mean, you'd have to get really lucky, but sometimes you get really lucky, so something to think about. So 3 units of Dark Reapers. In this Spearhead detachment, I also have 2 Crimson Hunter Exarchs. There is a third one in the list, so I may as well say there is a third one in the list. It's just part of a different detachment. But in this detachment, there are 2 Crimson Hunter Exarchs because you can only take 2 flyers in a Spearhead detachment. And they have star cannons, and they have the Exarch power of evade because -4 Space Marine guns exist and a 5 bin bun is a bit cheeky in that situation, which is
I
pretty handy.
can attest to that with my army. Having that like 5 bin bun on all your vehicles across the board is super useful.
Yeah, big time. I mean, Phil, if your Krieg had a 5 bin bun, I mean, imagine how great they'd be.
I know, winning for days.
But yeah, so look, I mean, the Crimson Hunter Exarch has had a points increase, but the thing that's really helped it along is the fact that it was already really amazing to begin with, and second of all, the new Exarch powers. So obviously, the one that most people are using or have been using, including myself, has been the don't suffer the penalties for moving and shooting. So hitting on 2s. Which is massive, but given the way that the meta has kind of gone with the sorts of crazy Marines and their insane AP doing the rounds, or even if you play against, say, like Chaos Knights that are rocking loads and loads and loads of big melter cannons, those 5 bin buns can be a real pain in the arse for those guys, which is cool. So that's the first Spearhead detachment. Then we have a second Spearhead detachment, which has a Warlock. This is all the same craft world, so this is a Warlock. This Warlock has Protect and Jink and also Impair Senses, because I'm quite a fan of Impair Senses. So in this detachment is 2 Falcons and 1 Night Spinner, and also a Crimson Hunter Exarch. So 2 Falcons, 1 Night Spinner. So the Falcons have...
So the madness behind this is that if you said that you were running 2 Falcons in your list about a year ago, people would have had you sanctioned as a madman.
I mean, quite possibly. I think the thing is, obviously, with the Falcon is they've had a little bit of a points reduction, but combined with this trait, combined with the ability to carry, troop models as well, they're just really valuable. It's 115 points for one of these, with a star cannon, a pulse laser, and 2 shuriken catapults. Now, mine are 130 points because I'm taking Spirit Stones and Crystalline Targeting Matrix on them. So Crystalline Targeting Matrix is, as I don't suffer the penalty for moving and shooting if I'm shooting at the closest possible target. And Spirit Stones is 6 up, feel no pain, which I think is just crazy useful in terms of long-term survivability for these sorts of vehicles. So again, with the ability to reroll a hit and reroll a wound, you always start with the pulse laser. So you roll the pulse laser. If you get 1 hit, 1 miss, you reroll the miss. And then if you get 1 wound, 1 failed wound, you reroll the wound. Because the pulse laser becomes mad efficient when it's got those rerolls behind it. Yeah, sure, the star cannon can benefit from it as well, but 9 times out of 10, you're always going to kick off with that pulse laser and see what damage you get done. And then you're going to move over to the star cannon as just a sort of extra bit. But for 115 points base without the other kind of upgrades, it's just really, really good. It just offers you a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. One of the major things about the Falcons as well is that, as I've kind of explained to you so far, I had 3 units of Dark Reapers, 1 Farseer, 1 Warlock, and there is another HQ choice on foot that I'll talk about in a moment. But all 6 of those units, the 3 units of Dark Reapers and the 3 characters, all fit within these 2 Falcons. So it takes my army from potentially being 16 drops down to 10 drops. And in ITC actual mission packs, there are missions where they still use the I go, you go deployment, and the person who deploys first gets +1. So having a 10 drop army as a result of these Falcons is another inherent benefit that I don't necessarily think everyone's also taking into consideration. I don't know if people are still really, really thinking about drop rates for their armies, or they've just kind of completely given up on it.
If you look at like the Space Marine armies, like most Space Marine players now, like the higher tier guys, unless they're either running a brigade just to get all of the points, as many points as they can, or they're running lots and lots of spearheads like yourself.
Yeah.
just to get as much artillery as possible. But that's still in itself 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 drops, because you're looking at 9. You look at minimum 9 heavy supports, 3 characters, which gives you your 12. But then they might be chucking in the odd couple of squads of scouts for screening, stuff like that. So you're always going to build them, and they're not going to have drops. The only lists that are going to really outdrop you are ones like the Ultramarines repulsor armies, where it's like three massive squads of aggressors in 3 repulsors and then 2 characters.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Or Tom's Chaos Knight list that I played last night. That was 6 drops.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. A knight list will always just outdrop everyone, kind of thing. Like my army's just loads of drops because Dark Elder are so cheap. So I think in our matchup, I'll just be like, well, just put your army down. I'll put my army down at the same time because it's all bound to go in the same place regardless, kind of thing. And you just have that agreement to begin with to say you definitely get the +1.
Yeah. And then the Night Spinner is the Night Spinner, so it's an indirect fire weapon. It's strength 7, 2 damage, AP dash, but any 6s to wound are AP -4. Obviously, combo that with the ignores cover. It's effectively like having -1 because 9 times out of 10 you're using these things as again a bunker buster unit. So if someone's got mortars or someone's got artillery that they're keeping in the magic box or whatever it happens to be, you can obviously use these to apply pressure. They're also very good at killing Primaris Marines, which is vital in the current meta. And the only thing that goes above and beyond with this is that I've given it Spirit Stones. All my vehicles have Spirit Stones where possible, just to add to the survivability, because I'm relying really heavily on all these vehicles, so dropping 10 points to give them 6 up, feel no pain, is seems like a no-brainer to me. So that detachment was a Warlock, 2 Falcons, 1 Night Spinner, and 1 Crimson Hunter Exarch, which is exactly the same as the 2 previous Crimson Hunter Exarchs. And then the last Spearhead detachment is a Spirit Seer. This Spirit Seer is my Warlord. It has the Warlord trait of Seer of the Shifting Vector, which essentially is that it gets to reroll 1 psychic test per phase, or also 1 saving throw, or 1 wound. It's like basically it gets like a bonus reroll, which is super useful. So, if I really desperately need him to not be dead, I can reroll his 4-up invulnerable, free of charge. Or, if I really need a psychic power such as Quicken or Restrain to go off, I get to reroll that as well, which is pretty cool. So here's my Warlord. This detachment has a fast attack, which is 8 Shining Spears. The Shining Spear Exarch having the Skilled Rider Warlord trait, which gives it a 3-up invuln. But if you protect the unit, that 3-up invuln becomes a 2-up invuln. And then obviously the Shining Spears themselves get a 2-up save. So if you're taking fire from more kind of light weapons, just take it on the squad's 2-up if they've got like AP dash. But obviously if someone starts firing at you with like a massive anti-tank gun, you can obviously tank that onto your Exarch that will laugh at them with his 2-up invuln, because that's sort of how it goes.
Does the Exarch have a higher leadership than the squad?
No, all Aspect Warriors have the same leadership.
Oh, that's all right then.
To the best of my knowledge, anyway. Hang on, let me just double check that before I make that mad assertion. I've got to do that fantastic thing on Battlescribe where I change all of my viewership things, because they don't just have one button for that. So Shining Spear, Exarch, leadership 8. Shining Spear, leadership 8. Yeah, all the same.
So if he dies, you're not going to get in leadership trouble.
No, and he has 3 wounds as well, which is an irritating amount of wounds. Plus, also, if you cast Fortune on him, it gets even more hilarious because he has like 5-up feel no pain.
But they don't have the invuln in combat, though, do they?
No, it's only against ranged attacks. But then obviously you get the 2-up armor save.
Yeah, they're a 2-up, so on average they'll be getting a 4-up, 5-up save anyway.
Yeah, with 5-up feel no pain, and then their weapons themselves are -4, strength 6, flat 2 damage, which is really cool. And I often, depending on what my opponent is bringing, I often consider paying the 1 CP for this guy to have his native warlord trait, which is the expert hunter, which essentially allows him to reroll to wound against monsters or vehicles. So last night when I was playing Tom and his Chaos Knights, I was like, yeah, I better have expert hunter back on him because the ability to reroll those wounds is pretty important for him as well.
Can you do that on the fly? So if so depending on who your opponent is, you can add that on, or is that you're going to?
To the best of my understanding on the rules pack of the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, it is a pre-game stratagem, and they are not Space Marines, so there's no specification that you need to have done that before in your army list. I'll check with Adam to be 100% on his ruling on that, but as I understand it, yes, you can pay your 1 CP for that at the start of the game. But, I mean, again, I'll make sure to check with Adam before bringing that into effect.
Have to declare relics and stuff like that.
You do have to declare your 1 free relic, and you do have to declare your warlord and a warlord trait, and your psychic powers. Anything anything stratagem based, to the best of my knowledge, is declared at the start of the game to your opponent.
Excellent. That's cool.
And then so Shining Spears, there's 8 of them. I would love to have taken a full unit of 9, but I couldn't afford it. I had to make a whole heap of compromises to get that unit in there. Joe will tell you, because we've been playtesting the bejeebus out of Shining Spears. I am quite a convert of the Shining Spears at the moment. So I just really, really wanted them in there. 240 points, but it just had to be done.
Yeah, my favourite experience of Shining Spears is when you fail the double move psychic power.
Yeah.
And then just because you failed it. Because once they get that double move, they're an absolute pain in the bum to shift. Right.
Yeah, once they get stuck in, they are hard to get rid of. But
The only thing I found that does any real good, like I was running my fists, like the only way I could get them out was like a chapter master with a power fist, which just goes wailing in there and with a couple of squads with thunderhammers. But you really have to dedicate a lot of effort into killing them.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last elements of this is 1 more Night Spinner. So that's 2 Night Spinners total. So for those of you keeping count at home, that's 2 Falcons, 2 Night Spinners, 3 units of Dark Reapers, 3 Planes, i.e. the Crimson Hunter Exarch. And then the last 2 heavy support choices, because people on the internet seem to think these are amazing, and I've been looking for an excuse to use Wraith Lords for a while. 2 Wraith Lords with 2 Eldari missile launchers, and obviously Shuriken catapults to boot. So, yeah, I mean, in playtesting, they've been pretty consistently underwhelming, but then...
Why is it missile launchers and not Bright Lancers?
Well, 1, because they're cheaper, is definitely a factor. And 2, they're versatile, because obviously you get the anti-infantry variant on them. So the anti-infantry variant of the Eldari missile launcher is actually better than the frag missile, because the frag missile is strength 4 AP dash, whereas the star missile, plasma missile variant is strength 4 -1. So it's actually quite a useful anti-infantry gun, because obviously you get 2d6 shots, which is quite swingy. But if you assert an average of like 7 or 8 shots, you get that extra element to it for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's fine then.
Yeah, I personally speaking, I'm not sure about the Wraith Lords. It's one of those ones where everyone sort of talks about them. But I think the thing is in the playtesting that I've done, most people's armies have had relatively reasonable answers to them. But I've not actually done it.
I think they'll kind of excel themselves in like the Space Marine matchups, because like if you come up against the fist players rely solely on you either bringing lots of infantry or vehicles.
Yeah.
And whereas I've always found in games where I come up against something that's got toughness 5, toughness 6, toughness 7, that isn't a vehicle, that then becomes a problem, because then you lose a lot of your like +1 to wound kind of bonuses and your extra damage.
Yeah, so obviously these aren't vehicles and they're toughness 8. So against like the infamous Stalker bolt rifle, you're wounding them on 6s, and even if you're Imperial Fist, you're only doing 2 damage. Which is pretty big. So I do see the value of them. And to be honest with you, everyone knows that the big problem in this army is those free planes. So they're public enemy number 1, right? Like everyone's going to go for the planes turn 1, and rightly so, because they need to die.
The good thing about the wall, like the Wraith Lords, is that they can kind of just mooch around on the backboard, just holding objectives for you, and kind of taking minimal damage. They're kind of like the targetable version of the new ever popular Chaplain Dreadnought. Yeah. So they don't do a massive amount of damage, but they still do damage, and they get you points. Yeah, so,
totally. And I mean that's the thing. I mean, and also they're quite a useful counterpunch. So you know their base weapon is strength 7, flat 3 damage, which is pretty reasonable for the old Wraith Fist. So yeah, I mean you know the hang on, I'm just checking the so it's strength user -3 flat 3 damage, and they're strength 7. So that's pretty respectable as well, because obviously if someone sends in like, I don't know, a Captain Smash or something, you could, with 4 attacks, okay, fair enough, you probably need to jink Captain Smash because he's going to have a free up invuln, but if you get into Captain Smash and you hit him and wound him a few times and he fails a couple saves, he's dead, right? Because that's 6 damage.
And a non-Blood Angel's Captain Smash will struggle to kill a Wraith Lord.
Because they'll be winning it on 3s, won't they? No, 4s.
Yeah, they'll be winning it on 4s. So they'll be hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, wounding on 4s with no re-roll. So at most they'll do 3 to 6 damage, or either 3 or 6 damage. At which point you've still got nearly half your wounds left.
Yeah, which is no bad thing for sure.
And they don't degrade, do they, Wraith Lords?
No, they do. They're 10 wounds, so they do degrade.
Oh, they're 10 wounds. Oh.
Yeah, so they lose movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill as they degrade. That goes down from weapon skill, ballistic skill 3 to weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, weapon skill, ballistic skill 5. And then movement is 8, 7, 6. So they don't lose a lot of movement, but, you know, it's still meaningful. Has to be said.
That's super weird. I always thought that they were kind of like a dreadnought. So they had 8 wounds and they never degraded, which I kind of think would probably be better for them.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but then you know they're not even that many points now. So with 2 missile launchers, you're coming in at 120 points. For 10 wounds, toughness 8, free up save, and all of that DACA. So it's pretty reasonable for sure.
Revive wounds on them as well?
For a stratagem, yeah, because they are a Wraith construct. Also the Spirit Seer is quite useful as well, because you can use the reroll abilities on that. So the Spirit Seer has Spirit Sight or Wraith Sight or something like that it's called. And that essentially, hang on, let me just read it for you. Sorry, Spirit Mark, getting it all wrong here. You can reroll hit rolls for 1 friendly Craft World Spirit Host unit against enemy units that are within 6 of this model. So you can reroll. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for units within 6 of the Spirit Seer.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty reasonable as well. On top of the fact that you get your extra reroll for the Craft World attribute as well. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. It's again. There was a debate in my mind about making the Wraith Lords and one of the Night Spinners Sam Han, so as I could make the whole detachment Sam Han.
But I think like the Wraith Lord, I think you might be expecting too much of the Wraith Lord, if that makes sense. I think the Wraith Lord, his idea is just to kind of trudge about, being
totally.
And on a table that's got like lot of line of sight blocking the terrain, for instance, and you come up against the worst possible person for that, which is a guard player with loads of artillery, or a space marine player with loads and loads of thunder-fire cannons, whirlwinds, and like what's the and like the Scorpius kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Should design perfectly at removing like engineer units.
Yeah.
Where you could make that Wraith Lord an engineer, he can stand on an objective out of line of sight, and even his whirlwinds and the whirlwind Scorpius, which do get a lot of shots, are still only wounding you on 5s.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot of points out of him, or like which are worth way more than his value.
Oh, totally. No, I agree 100%. I think where I'm not seeing the value so much has been in the people that again, the initial playtesting that I've done. I've not played the Marine stuff yet. I'm hoping to come down and join you and Steve for some playtesting games at some point. I'm definitely going to get more games in against Tom, and I know we're getting together this weekend to do some playtesting. So I just need to. I need to play some more ITC games against some different armies and try and get to understand. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't even so the game I played the other day, I didn't even think about engineers as an option. I was just going old school because I was like, well, I'm gonna go Titan Slayers and I'm gonna go King Slayer, and then I was like, oh, I don't know what else to do, so I'll go old school. But you're right, engineers would be an absolute.
Let me just check. It might be infantry only. I'm gonna check quickly.
2 hours later.
Yeah, so it's engineers. It's select 2 non-character, non-fortification units from your army to be engineers. Starting from battle round 2, if either of these units starts and ends your turn within 3 inches of an objective marker you control, and it did not make any attacks or manifest any psychic powers during your turn, 1 point at the end of that turn.
Wicked. So that's an option. Fair
So
enough.
it's an option. If you come up against someone who's got like terrible, because if someone's got loads of like massed infantry, and you know this Wraiths aren't going to put a dent in it, I'll just plonk them back and just forget about them. Or you come up, like I said, against a mass artillery army that you're never going to get a line of sight on, then that becomes their job.
Potentially, yeah. I'm not entirely sure whether that's going to be the most optimal thing, but I appreciate it's an option, and it's good to have options, I suppose. So there we go. That was my list. I mean, it's a relative alteration of lists that have been doing the rounds. Obviously that is effectively a collective works of the collective minds of various Eldari players that are doing the rounds over the internets, and obviously I appreciate and respect everyone out there who is continuing to fight the good cause of the Craftworld Elder. I lost my way for a bit towards the end of 2019 and then subsequently very early 2020, but I'm very much back on board with the cause. The path of the warrior is or the seer or whatever other path system is available is my way forwards from here on in. So. Yeah, it's quite refreshing actually to have wavered even for just a little bit and now be very much kind of back into the fold. You know, my resolve has been strengthened. That for competitive play at least, it's Craftworld Elder from here on in.
So you're still very much on the competitive train, because I remember after the last GT you were a bit like, don't want to do competition stuff for a while, or
I mean, here's the thing, right? So Bournemouth GT's coming up. I've signed up to it. I'm not gonna not do it, even though I was on the fence after the Warhammer Grand Tournament. And I think look, anyone who listened to our last podcast will understand that we all came away a little bit deflated after that GT event for a number of reasons. But I kind of consolidated myself on the basis that I don't want to not go because I don't want to let Adam down. I don't want to, not be there because obviously we've done what little we can to try and promote it and kind of big it up and but so it's that thing. I'm committed to going, and if I'm committed to going, I want to take something that's competitive, but I want to take something that I enjoy. And I think that was the problem with me at the end of that one. Now I'm not saying that I'm now going to go to a tournament, competitive tournament, loads and loads and loads and loads. But I'm definitely interested. I feel a little bit rejuvenated in the idea that I want to really push and continue to play and challenge myself with my Craftworld list. That also said, though, is I'm looking forward to the Age of Sigmar stuff that we've got coming up. I'm looking forward to, building and playing a more versatile selection of lists. I think, the thing I love about my Craftworld Elder and my Craftworld Elder collection and really where my head's at now is I'm looking forward to testing myself with it competitively, as I have done consistently. But I'm also looking forward to just mucking around with it and trying different units and doing fun stuff with it. Because I think the thing about Craftworld Elder is, for me anyway, it's an army list that possesses so many flexible options. I've got this Aspect Warrior army list that I want to run, and I'm really excited about getting into grips with that. I've got a Wraith army that I'm really excited about as well, that I really want to get to grips with. So, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just one of those weird things. It's like, ebbs and flows, I suppose. So,
yeah, I think it's a good position to be in. I want people to not get upset about what I'm about to say, and I don't mean to tarnish everyone with the same brush, because I'm not. But maybe sometimes a lot of competitive players don't really go out to find for themselves what is the best units for them. They normally wait to get told what is the best unit. And this can come for so many reasons. Sometimes it's a case of, I need an army quick, I'm doing this event, it's last minute, what do I take? Internet tells me it's good. Or it could be a cost thing, like you're not exactly flush for cash, so you're just going to buy the models that you know are good. But to be in a position where I've got access to all these models, I can play around with it. I'm not fussed about winning the ITC, but I want to get renowned for doing good with something, but what's not in the main eye, as it were. I like to go a little bit off-piste, kind of thing. And I think that's a good place to be for you.
Yeah, and I think that's my thing. Is like I'd like the idea of experimenting with stuff and bringing weird, janky stuff along. For the Bournemouth Grand Tournament, this is the army list I've settled on because it just feels like a solid list at this time. But as the season goes on, as I start to go to more of the kind of comfortable one-dayers and things, I'll start mucking around with stuff. I'll just be like, here's a massive Seer Council on bikes. Here's, 18 Shining Spears. Here's 30 Striking Scorpions. Here's whatever. I really want to sort of play around with it as the year goes on and just focus on it. Because I think the thing that I'd be most proud of at the end of this year it is actually really kind of getting back to more my kind of hobby roots and actually kind of painting armies and enjoying the game again. Because what essentially, look, here's my player journey. Last year, I took a really good Elder list at a time when Elder were really good to an event, and I did well. And I got a bit of attention off of it because I won a GT heat, and I felt like a big deal. Now, in the grand scheme of things, and those of you who listen to us who understand or are involved in the ITC and see that as the be-all and end-all, obviously, a grand tournament heat win doesn't necessarily feel like a big deal to everyone, but it did to me. And it massively changed my mentality when it came to competitive play. And in the early part of 2019, after that GT heat win in late 2018, I was winning quite a lot of tournaments in the local area. I think I won like 4 tournaments, more or less back-to-back in the early part of 2019. So I was on a real tear because Craftworld Elder had just jumped. But then I became obsessed with trying to maintain that streak, and I became all about the competitive stuff, and I became all about looking at Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, Blood Angels as it ended up being, and I started just losing myself to this whole kind of I have to win at all costs kind of mentality, and I think that really, really didn't help my mindset. And I think that's where I was at the end of the Grand Tournament, not just frustrated because the event was a little bit of a letdown from an organisational perspective, but also just sort of frustrated with myself that I'd come to the end of this journey, and I've just sort of felt like I didn't really kind of recognise myself in that, if that makes sense. I know it's a bit sort of weird and meta and a bit too grandiose, but what I'm saying is I just didn't feel like I had done right by myself and that I'd done what got me to the dance in the first place, I suppose. So yeah, look, I think the long and short of it is I'm excited this year just to focus on Elder. I'm pretty much selling everything else. Everything else can just go. The only stuff I'm going to keep hold of is the Imperial Knight Army that Joe has beautifully painted for me, the Blood Angel Army that Joe has beautifully painted for me, and also my Space Marine Heroes army, i.e. an army that is mostly comprised of miniatures that have come out from Space Marine Heroes Series 1 and 2, because I just like those miniatures. But like my Custodies are going, my Chaos Space Marines have already gone. I sold those off to Triple Helix last week. I'm getting rid of 90% of my Primara stuff. I'm just going to sack it off because I just don't see the point of it, because I don't enjoy playing it. And that's it really. I just sort of want to focus on building and painting Elder. I want to become like Phil for Krieg, you know. I want to be more like Phil. That's the goal.
Yeah.
You're my hobby hero, Phil.
For a beard to match.
No, I can't do that. I don't have the hormones for it.
No, fair enough.
You have to bring that up, don't you? My inability to grow a beard. I've said it before. I don't grow a beard. I grow long individual wisps. I get like one of those like kung fu master beards.
Like homeless Phil Mitchell. Not Phil Mitchell.
Ian Beale.
Would you like Ian Beale when he went homeless for a while?
Yeah, that's pretty much me. If I was ginger, I would be the spitting image of homeless Ian Beale with a beard. But yeah, no, it shows potential. Like stubble comes in, I think, oh maybe, and then I let it grow, and then I realise that no, it's just a series of individual hairs.
I think people need to, whilst you're listening to this, you just need to go and Google homeless Ian Beale, just to get that image in your mind.
There you go. The EastEnders classic. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil, you don't know very much at all about Craft with Elder, but what do you think of the sound of that list? Would you like to face that in the future?
Probably not, which is probably a good sign for you. It's interesting though, because I was listening to, I want to say Chapter Tactics, but it was the one about the 40k Stat Center podcast where they're going through all the LVO lists. And your Elder list seems very different from the ones that they were talking about. So have you had a look at the LVO lists yet? Or
not a detailed
look? Perceived...
The popular lists are like 3 Night Spinners, a massive 10-man unit of Wraithguard, and a massive unit of Shining Spears.
And there's something like Warlock Conclaves as well, I think I heard mentioned.
Warlock Conclaves on bikes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I like about this list is it's very punchy. And a lot of people were running similar kind of builds at the Grand Tournament Finals, and I saw a lot of interesting elements to that for sure. So I'll take a more detailed look at the LVO, but I've pretty much had to dial into this list because I've still got a few things to paint for it. So this is where I'm at with this at this time, and we'll see how it goes. It's a journey again, right? I'm sort of trying to figure out the meta, figure out where the Elder work within that, and just figure out what works for me within it. So yeah,
that's also a very good thing as well. Like that journey of learning and play testing. Because if you just pick up like a net list, a lot of people just kind of assume that it's just good from the outset and it plays itself. But even with that case, you still got to play it loads and loads and loads to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
If you start with a list that you've made yourself, you'll play a couple games. You'll be like, right, I don't like this. I'll swap that out, put this in, and then you'll play more games. You go, okay, that was good, but because I put that in, this thing is now weaker, and you'll change it. It'll evolve over time. But the thing is, though, you've then got like 20, 30 games in by the time you've got to a tournament, and you know the army inside out, and you can play it blindfolded. So
there's a really interesting trick in this army list as well that I've not really mentioned, which was the impair senses stuff. So I don't know how many people are talking about that, but for the sake of argument, I'll just briefly talk you through it. So impair senses is one of the new psychic powers that replaces smite for any Craft World Psyker. So impair senses is, if manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 visible to the Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. When that unit is chosen to shoot with, models in that unit can only target the closest visible enemy unit unless the target is within 18 of the shooting model. Now, what's really interesting about how my list plays is most of the stuff has like a 48-inch threat range on its guns. 36 for the star cannons, 48 for the pulse, and 48 from all the missiles, I believe. I'll just double check that while I'm saying all these words. So that threat range essentially allows me to kind of backboard a lot of stuff. Yeah, it is 48. But where my Shining Spears are kind of hurling themselves forwards, if you had something really quite potent, like say for example a Castellan, for example, I could use some very kind of well laid out deployment with that 8-man unit to essentially get stuck into stuff, but create a situation where that unit of Shining Spears could potentially be the only thing you can shoot at. And if you've buffed that unit of Shining Spears to the point that it's got a 2-up invuln on it, it can get really, really tanky. So if you had, like, I don't know, a Knight Castellan, for example, in that you positioned these bikes in a kind of crafty way and everything else was outside of 18, taking into consideration that obviously an Imperial Knight can move 12. So it's a big ask, and this probably isn't the best example, but say I create a set of circumstances, which, again, I continue to refine in terms of how potentially this will work, but I could create a situation where either that Knight Castellan can only fire at the Shining Spears, and the Shining Spears aren't in combat, so can be shot at, but I can tank stuff on a 2-up invuln. Or I could create a situation where the bikes are in combat, and then that Knight Castellan can only shoot at them, but can't shoot at them because they're in combat, which is a really janky extra thing that the army list can do now. So you can create situations where like big, terrifying shooting units are completely neutralized. So against you, Phil, I could create a situation where I go, that Baneblade can only shoot at this unit, and this unit is now in combat with one of your tank commanders, so enjoy not shooting with your Baneblade this turn, blah, 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 which is quite fun.
I think Phil just quit the game then.
Flip that table over.
Yeah, exactly. I hear the rules are underneath the table. Yank! There you go. But there you go, guys. Look, that's me and Joe's army lists. Hopefully you learned something or found something interesting about that. Hopefully you'll be at the Bournemouth Grand Tournament and we'll get a chance to say hello. Please do say hello if you see us around, because, you know, as I've kind of alluded to on multiple occasions, it's well nice when you do that. But yeah, that's our hopes and plans. From my side of things, I think I share Joe's optimism for my WDL. I think I will probably post 3 wins. I think 3 wins, 3 losses I'll be fine with, but I'd like to go 4-2. 4-2 I'd be pretty happy with for this one, with this list. But again, I think with Marine list, it's a 50-50. If the Marine player goes first and is really good, I'm done for. But isn't that the same for everyone?
Yeah, it's. I think if you come up against a Marine player and they're going first, it's just like, well, good game.
Yes.
I'll be in the bar.
Yeah, I mean,
you just roll out your stuff and I'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is a plus, I suppose, isn't it? one way or the other, the games will be over pretty quickly, which is no bad thing. But yeah, if I go first and I get off the relevant psychic powers, I would cause a Space Marine army a lot of damage in the opening turn, an almost insurmountable amount of damage in the sense that once it's done, I just don't see them coming back from it, because the amount of firepower that this army outputs, if you've got lots of like tanks and things, I can just lay into them for days. And things like Primaris Marines aren't a massive worry for this army. I mean, this army tears through Primaris Marines, and it also tears through vehicles. The big problem this army list is potentially going to have is I don't know what role Sisters are going to play in the meta. I think Sisters have a potential to be quite interesting with their relatively cheap troop choices that are quite durable and interesting. And I also think Tau is always going to be an interesting matchup. But I think I outshoot Tau because I've got longer range than most Tau stuff, and so I'm not too worried about Tau. But Sisters are going to be interesting, and other Horde armies like GSC. I mean, Gene Stealer Cult are always gonna be a bit of an X Factor army. So who knows? Right?
Gene Stealer Cult are one of those armies that have been kind of crushed by the Space Marine armies and the Space Marine meta, but they still do like a good Gene Stealer Cult player will still do over most other armies quite comfortably.
Yeah. Nobody's prepared for the Spanish Inquisition, as they say.
Oh, yes.
Phil, any closing thoughts on our aspirations around the Bournemouth GT?
Just to say, best of luck. I hope you guys do really well. I'm looking forward to the inevitable marathon wrap-up podcast that we'll be doing in the next episode.
We'll try and keep it relatively streamlined. It depends what happens. I mean, I suppose we've had the relative luxury to talk about this more because it's quite quiet at the moment in the hobby, isn't it? It's not much else going on, so we thought, let's talk about this Bournemouth GT because it seems like a thing to do. But yeah, who knows what will have happened by then. We're about to see the LVO reveals, which I imagine will probably become a segment within this podcast before it's over. Yeah. So who knows? But there you go. That was our thoughts on the Bournemouth GT, guys. Thank you as always. We will now transition to the next bit of the podcast, whatever that may be. Thank you. Woo!
Woo!
Woo! So my vocal cords are still a bit screwed after that coughing fit I used to have, so it doesn't quite work the same way as it used to. Thank you, everybody. That concludes episode 39 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast. We hope you enjoyed this wondrous romp. Is that right? I don't entirely know. Romp I should have gone for, not rump.
It's got a lovely rump, but that's your choice.
Well, indeed. But anyway, thank you very much for checking out episode 39. We hope you enjoyed it. We felt like this was quite a decent little episode, so hopefully you've enjoyed it. I apologise to those who felt like they really, really enjoyed our 5-hour epic that was episode 38. This will probably only clock up to around 3 hours, so apologies for letting you down. I did have a conversation with someone where he had asked it to be 7.5 hours long so as it could get him through an entire day of work, but we failed you on this occasion.
That's a big one. That is like when we did the Heat 2, Heat 3, whatever it was, Heat 2. We had to split that up over several podcasts, so maybe we need another big group event that we're all going to.
Well, as it would so happen, we've got one on the horizon, don't we? We've got the old team tournament. You, me, Richie, Phil, teaming it up.
Oh, there we go. That's a definite 7.5 hour stint right there.
Are you making that as a promise?
I want to say no, but I don't want to disappoint him now. So
it sounded like you were making promises, Joe.
It's a half promise.
An insincere promise. A fingers crossed behind my back promise.
Yeah.
There you go. Phil, how do you feel about Joe's general, level of distrust and demeanour here? Are you appalled by his behaviour?
Oh, it's pretty standard for Joe.
I know, isn't it ever? God, he's a nuisance, isn't he, old Joe?
You signed up for this community outreach program.
I did.
I'm just along for the ride.
Phil, what are you going to be up for the rest of the week? Because weirdly, now the concerns of the podcast are behind us. This is recorded on Monday the 27th, nearly an entire week before it has to go out. So, you've actually got relative freedom on your hands between now and, the next time we get together recording. What are you going to be doing?
That's true. I'll probably be doing more scratch building stuff, and I've got to do more of my minor tools as well. So I want to crack on with that.
I'm going to be doing more play testing, I imagine, for getting my head around how ITC works and all of that fun stuff. I played a really good game against Tom the other day in his Chaos Knight army. That was pretty good. And I also did play testing against Joe, didn't I, the other night? That was good as well, wasn't it, mate?
Actually, last night, from us recording this now, not on the Friday night that this actually gets released, but yes.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And I won mainly by taking advantage from your lack of knowledge of ITC. I think, helped me along a little bit there.
No, I don't think so, actually. I think the thing that helped you was a bit of poor placement on my behalf and some less than optimized turns. I think I genuinely just made some legitimate tactical errors. I think, but yeah, the positioning of my Shining Spears unit was definitely not ideal. And it wasn't a big loss though, right? I mean, it was 26-28 to you.
Yeah, there was only 2 points in it. It was super close.
It was really close. Well, the end of Battle Round 4, it was 17-17, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was a draw because you kind of rushed off a bit in the beginning, kind of like plodded along behind, and then you had a relatively rough turn, and then my Incubi kind of came down and made a mess of stuff.
Yeah, it got really interesting really quickly. I think pretty good account of the armies for sure. And definitely something that's got me quite excited. I'm enjoying playing my Elder stuff again, and I'm looking forward to playing some Knight stuff because Joe was nice enough to finish painting my Knight Castellan, so now I've got a big scary Knight to add to my collection of other Joe painted Knights. So I'm quite excited about running those guys pretty soon as well. They look amazing.
I actually quite enjoy painting it, and I discovered I've actually got 2 Knights here still on sprue.
Brilliant. Are they both mine?
One's mine and one's yours.
Okay.
But I'm probably going to paint my one in the exact same colour scheme just for ease.
It makes sense, right? I mean, I think to round it out, we probably... I don't know, do you reckon you should do it as a Knight Paladin?
Well, I'm kind of thinking 2 Knight Crusaders.
Yeah, 2 Knight Crusaders. Is it a Knight Crusader kit?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well, fair enough then, yeah. Because a Knight Errant's also a decent option nowadays. How are you getting on with your Imperial Knights these days, Phil? Are you giving up on them?
I probably would have started on them or gone back to them if it wasn't for us doing the 1K Marine projects, which means I'm still struggling to do Marines. Well, it isn't, because you did it ages ago, and no one else has actually finished it. Maybe Dan sold his or squirreled his way.
Hilariously, when this started, Richie made a hilarious joke. At the time,
that you would have sold your army.
I would have painted 2,000 points and sold them before anyone else would have finished. Fun story. That happened.
Yeah, it's because I think everyone else was prioritising other things, and you just went ahead and beat everyone to it, basically. Yeah,
the Space Marine project is something that I'm keen to see done. I think once this Bournemouth Grand Tournament thing gets out of the way, I dare say we'll put some good focus into that ahead of the AOS project that's looming in the background, because that's going to be super fun. It's a year of fabulous hobby pursuits.
I might just do Iron Hand so that when I sell them, that they'll definitely sell well.
Well, you best get in there before the next FAQ then.
That's probably true, yeah.
That's absolutely true, yeah. I think, again, see what comes around the corner, mate. I think at this point in time, it's, I don't think it's a bad time just to become a bit more focused on, the armies you have and just kind of making do for a bit, because any decisions you make about big new lists and investments at this stage is only going to be met with change.
I'm really enjoying doing my Drakari at the moment. So I've got my big 10-man unit, nearly done. I've got a bunch of scourges to do. I've got my big 12-man unit, 10-man unit of Reaver jet bikes to do. 15 witches to paint, and a succubus. And I've got 3 Talos in their boxes. I've got lots of stuff to do for this army. And once it's done, it will give me a lot of variation to play with, so I can play lots of different styles. So it means I don't really get bored of the army. That's the idea.
No, absolutely, man. There's a lot of variety, and obviously within the realm of Drakari, you can always start to add in other Craft World and Harlequin elements anyway. But I feel like we've probably already talked about this at great lengths with the segment that came before this outro. So admittedly, we recorded that last week, so I forgot exactly what was said. But regardless, I imagine a lot of this stuff was covered. So yeah. But we did play, and Joe's currently 1-0 in this kind of matchup. But I think I'll get him when it counts. When we cross paths in a competitive setting, I'll have him. I'm certain. Yeah,
I'm always that Crash Team Racing / Mario Kart player that wins up until the last corner and then just plows off the map, and everyone just passes them.
That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah.
You attract blue shells like no one's business.
Yeah, that's my life now.
That's your life. You are forever blue shelled.
Yeah. Or bananas. Bananas on the track.
Yeah, bananas on the track. Well, yeah, because I suppose bananas would probably be more apt than the blue shell, because the bananas, it sort of signify that you're ever so close to catching the leaders, but then knocked back at the last moment, yeah. Ever out of reach, Joe. Like the cookie jar, high up on the shelf. Oh, there we are. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. If you'd like to do so, please consider liking and subscribing, whether or not you're on a platform that facilitates you doing that. Maybe write a review, do something nice on our social media, take pictures of yourself listening to the podcast with a thumbs up, looking all enthusiastic, and then put that on Instagram. All things are viable, and we accept all forms of flattery. But equally, if you want to say horrible things about us and complain that we did a 25-minute intro where we talked about cigarettes and other kind of pointless faff, then by all means do that as well. Because, your opinions are equally valid. Sorry. Anyway, goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.